So you're telling me this tiny, furless biped is supposed to be the newest addition to our squadron? Commander Zakthar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter, a sound not unlike someone rapidly tapping silverware against fine china. I've had larger parasites removed from my third thoracic segment. With all due respect, sir, the human recruit said, standing at perfect attention despite the obvious size disparity between him and the 9-foot-tall insectoid officer. I graduated top of my class at the Terran Military Academy, and I can assure you that what I lack in chitinous armor, I make up for in tactical thinking and adaptability. Oh, it speaks. Zekthar turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zinvra, whose translucent wings fluttered in what could only be interpreted as amusement. And it thinks it's clever. Lieutenant Kai Bennett, the aforementioned human, maintained his composure, though a muscle in his jaw twitched ever so slightly. This wasn't the first time he'd faced prejudice since humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition 3 years ago. Most species still viewed humans as primitive newcomers, barely out of their planetary cradle and certainly not ready for the complexities of interstellar warfare. Lieutenant Bennett's scores in the simulations were... began Recruitment Officer Plex, a gelatinous blob whose body rippled with bioluminescent patterns when he spoke. I don't care if he can solve quantum equations while juggling plasma grenades, interrupted Commander Zekthar. This is the 7th Reconnaissance Squadron. We specialize in high-risk intelligence gathering on the most hostile planets in the Orion Arm. We need soldiers who can survive, not fragile mammals who need constant atmospheric adjustments just to breathe. Kai cleared his throat. Sir, Earth has some of the most diverse and extreme environments in the catalogued galaxy. We humans have lived in everything from Arctic tundras to scorching deserts. Our adaptive capabilities are precisely why... Yes. Why your species managed to claw its way out of your gravity well and join the grown-ups at the table. Zekthar waved a clawed appendage dismissively. Very impressive. Still doesn't explain why you're standing in my hangar bay expecting to be assigned to my elite squadron. Before Kai could respond, an alarm blared throughout the station. Unidentified biological entity detected in Docking Bay 7, announced the station's AI. Security protocols initiated. Commander Zakthar's compound eyes narrowed. That's where your shuttle arrived, isn't it, human? Kai frowned. Yes, sir, but I came alone. Evidently not, the commander hissed, already heading toward the indicated location with rapid clicking steps. If you've brought some Terran parasite onto my station, I assure you, I followed all decontamination protocols, Kai said, jogging to keep up with the commander's longer stride. When they reached Docking Bay 7, a squad of security personnel had already formed a perimeter around Kai's small transport vessel. Their weapons were trained on something beneath the shuttle that remained out of sight. Report, barked Zekthar. A security officer, a reptilian draconian with iridescent scales, turned to salute. Sir, sensors detected a non-sentient life form that somehow bypassed our scanners. It appears to be... A low, rumbling growl interrupted him, sending visible shivers through the gathered security team. Several of them took instinctive steps backward. Kai's eyes widened in recognition. Oh no, he muttered. Oh no! Oh no! Zekthar's mandibles clicked furiously. What exactly does oh no mean, Lieutenant? Before Kai could answer, a large muscular shape slunk out from beneath the shuttle. The gathered aliens collectively gasped as 90 pounds of sleek, powerful predator emerged into view. It was a canine, specifically a German shepherd with a glossy black and tan coat. Its ears were perked forward attentively, and its intelligent eyes scanned the room before locking onto Kai. Immediately, its demeanor changed from cautious to ecstatic. The dog bounded forward, weaving between the startled security personnel with ease, and launched itself at Kai. Max! Kai exclaimed, dropping to one knee as the dog practically tackled him, tail wagging furiously. How the hell did you get on my shuttle? You know this creature? Demanded Zekthar, who had retreated several steps at the dog's approach. He's my dog, Kai explained, struggling to control the enthusiastic animal who was now attempting to lick every inch of his face. My companion, but he was supposed to stay with my sister while I was on assignment. That's a predator, stammered Lieutenant Zinvra, her wings buzzing in agitation. Its dental structure clearly indicates carnivorous tendencies. Well, technically omnivorous these days, Kai corrected, scratching behind Max's ears. But yes, dogs are descended from wolves, apex predators on Earth. They've been domesticated for thousands of years, though. Domesticated? Repeated Zekthar, his voice rising in pitch. You're telling me your species takes apex predators and keeps them as pets? Kai shrugged. Sure. This is Max. He's trained as a service animal and for search and rescue. He's completely harmless. As if to directly contradict this statement, Max chose that moment to bare his teeth and let out a throaty growl at a security officer who had moved too close. Completely harmless, echoed Zakthar sarcastically. It just threatened Officer Krell. Only because Officer Krell was pointing a weapon at him, Kai explained. Dogs are protective and sensitive to threats. Max is just doing his job. Its job is to protect you? Zinvra seemed fascinated despite her fear. Among other things, Kai said, finally getting Max to sit at attention beside him. He can track scents over incredible distances, detect changes in human physiology that indicate illness or distress, find survivors in disaster zones, and yes, defend me if necessary. Commander Zakthar studied the canine with renewed interest. This dog can detect things your technology cannot? Absolutely, Kai nodded. A dog's sense of smell is approximately 10,000 to 100,000 times more acute than a human's. They can detect certain cancers, predict seizures, find explosives, track people through forests, deserts, or urban environments, and locate survivors buried under rubble. Fascinating, murmured Recruitment Officer Plex, whose gelatinous form had inched closer. And you say all humans keep these creatures? Many do, Kai said. We've co-evolved with them for millennia. They're not just companions. They're partners. Some would say they're family. Family? Zakthar seemed genuinely perplexed now. You consider this predatory species to be your kin? In a manner of speaking, Kai said, smiling as Max leaned against his leg. There's a saying on Earth, a dog is the only thing on Earth that loves you more than he loves himself. The gathered aliens exchanged looks of bewilderment. I apologize for the confusion he's caused, Kai continued. I'll arrange for him to be transported back to Earth immediately. Commander Zakthar was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes fixed on Max, who returned the gaze without flinching. That won't be necessary, the commander finally said. I believe we may have underestimated your species, Lieutenant Bennett. Anyone who can command the loyalty of an apex predator might have valuable insights to offer the 7th Squadron after all. Kai tried not to show his surprise. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Zakthar clicked. Both you and your Max will need to pass the squadron's qualification tests. And I'm warning you now, they're designed to break even the hardiest Draconian commandos. Kai straightened to attention, and remarkably, Max seemed to mirror his posture, sitting tall and alert. We'll be ready, sir. This is absolutely insane, muttered Kai as he adjusted the environmental settings on his exosuit. You're telling me that the qualification test takes place on Nexus 9, the Death Planet? Sergeant Grax, a granite-skinned Petrosian whose body resembled living rock, grunted affirmatively. Commander Zakthar doesn't believe in coddling new recruits. Nexus 9 is a perfect testing ground. Volatile atmosphere, unpredictable gravitational fluctuations, and some of the most aggressive indigenous life forms in the sector. And let me guess, Kai said dryly. We'll be dropped in the most hostile region? Naturally. Grax's craggy face split into what might have been a smile. The Crimson Basin. Beautiful place, really, if you ignore the acid rain and predatory flora. Kai glanced over at Max, who was being fitted with a custom-made protective suit by a reluctant technician. The German Shepherd seemed completely unbothered by the strange equipment being attached to his body. And the commander approved bringing Max? Not just approved, insisted, Grax said. Said something about testing your partnership. Personally, I think he's hoping your beast will give us all a good show. The 7th hasn't had a decent entertainment in months. Glad to be of service, Kai muttered. The technician stepped back from Max, who immediately trotted over to Kai, his movements only slightly hampered by the protective gear. I've never designed equipment for such a creature, the technician said, blinking her 3 eyes nervously. But it should protect him from the atmosphere and most environmental hazards. The material is puncture-resistant, though I wouldn't test that against Nexian thornstalkers. Thornstalkers? Kai questioned. You'll know them when you see them, Grax said ominously. Or rather, you won't see them until it's too late. Fantastic, Kai sighed, kneeling to check Max's suit himself. The dog patiently allowed the inspection, though his tail wagged when Kai scratched under his chin. It's okay, buddy. We've been through worse, right? Remember that training exercise in the Mojave? Max gave a soft woof of acknowledgement. Is it conversing with you? Grax asked, fascination overcoming his usual stoicism. In a manner of speaking, Kai replied, standing. We understand each other, not in words, but in intent and emotion. It's a bond that goes beyond language. Grax's rocky features remained impassive. We'll see how well your bond holds up on Nexus 9. The dropship shuddered as it entered Nexus 9's turbulent atmosphere. Inside, Kai checked his equipment one final time. Oxygen reserves, emergency beacon, standard-issue Galactic Coalition pulse rifle, and the special additions he'd requested. Climbing gear, a filtration system designed specifically for Earth mammals, and a reinforced combat knife. Across from him sat the other 3 members of the test squad, Sergeant Grax, Lieutenant Zinvra, and a luminary named Jix, whose body emitted a soft blue glow even through his environmental suit. The test is simple, Zinvra explained, her wings buzzing nervously despite being constrained by her suit. We'll be dropped 5 kilometers from an abandoned research outpost. Our mission is to reach it, retrieve a specific data crystal, and make it to the extraction point 10 kilometers beyond that. We have 36 standard hours. Sounds straightforward enough. Kai nodded. What's the catch? Jix's light pulsed with amusement. The catch, human, is that Nexus 9 experiences what we call evolutionary storms every few hours. Massive energy surges that temporarily accelerate the mutation rate of all biological organisms within their radius. Wait, Kai frowned. You're saying the local wildlife evolves in real time? Not full evolution, clarified Zinvra. More like rapid adaptation. A creature that hunts you at dawn might have developed new defenses or attacks by midday. That's why Nexus 9 is so valuable for research, added Grax, and so dangerous for everyone else. Kai glanced down at Max, who sat calmly at his feet, seemingly unperturbed by the violent shaking of the dropship. Hear that, buddy? We're in for a real adventure. Max's tail thumped once against the metal floor. 2 minutes to drop zone, announced the ship's AI. Prepare for deployment. The team rose and moved toward the drop bay doors. Kai felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, the pre-mission cocktail of fear and excitement that he'd come to almost enjoy during his years of training. Remember, Grax rumbled, this isn't just about reaching the objective. The commander will be evaluating your performance throughout. How you handle stress, how you adapt to the unexpected, how you work with the team. And how well you control your beast, added Zinvra, eyeing Max warily. Don't worry about Max, Kai assured her. He's a professional. The drop bay doors slid open, revealing a hellscape below. The Crimson Basin lived up to its name, a vast depression in the landscape where the soil and sparse vegetation shared a deep red hue, as if the ground itself was bleeding. In the distance, jagged mountains pierced the rust-colored clouds, and occasional flashes of energy, the aforementioned evolutionary storms, illuminated the horizon. Welcome to paradise, Jix said, his bioluminescence dimming slightly in what might have been apprehension. Drop in 10 seconds, the AI announced. Kai took a deep breath, centering himself. He looked down at Max, who was staring intently at the alien landscape below, ears forward, body tense with anticipation. Stay close, Kai murmured, and watch for thornstalkers, whatever those are. The drop signal flashed, and without hesitation, the team leaped into the crimson abyss below. The first thing Kai noticed upon landing was the silence. Despite the visual chaos of the environment, the blood-red vegetation, the swirling patterns in the soil, the distant flashes of evolutionary storms, Nexus 9's atmosphere carried sound poorly. Each footstep, each breath through his filtration system seemed muffled and distant. Comms check, Kai said into his helmet mic, adjusting the volume higher than normal. Loud and clear, human, came Grax's gravelly response. I read you, Zinvra added. Present and illuminated. Jix's voice had a musical quality to it, even through the comms. Max padded silently beside Kai, his head swiveling as he took in their surroundings. The dog's protective suit included a transparent helmet section that allowed his sensitive nose to pick up scents while remaining protected from the toxic atmosphere. 5 kilometers east to the research outpost, Grax said, checking a wrist-mounted holographic map. We should reach it within 3 hours if we maintain a steady pace. They set off in formation, with Grax taking point, Zinvra and Jix on the flanks, and Kai and Max bringing up the rear. The terrain was challenging, uneven and occasionally interrupted by patches of what appeared to be writhing, tentacle-like vegetation that retreated into the soil when approached. Sentinel vines, Zinvra explained when she noticed Kai watching the strange plants. Harmless, unless you step directly on them. Then they'll inject a paralytic toxin and slowly digest you over several days. Charming, Kai muttered. They had been walking for nearly an hour when Max suddenly stopped, his body going rigid, ears pricked forward. "Hold!" Kai called, raising a fist in the universal military signal. The team immediately froze in place. "What is it?" Grax demanded, his rocky hand already reaching for his weapon. Kai pointed to Max. He sensed something. The German shepherd was staring intently at a patch of ground about 20 meters ahead. There was nothing visibly unusual about it, just the same crimson soil and occasional sentinel vines. "I don't see anything," Jix said, his glow brightening slightly as he strained to detect whatever had alerted the dog. "That's the point," Kai said quietly. "Max's senses are far superior to ours. If he's detected something, it's there." As if to prove Kai's point, Max let out a low growl, the sound barely audible through his helmet but unmistakable in its intent. "Danger," Kai translated. "Something's hiding there." Grax raised his heavy pulse cannon. "Should we eliminate it?" "Wait," Kai held up a hand. "Let's try to avoid unnecessary conflict. Max can guide us around it." After a brief discussion, they agreed to detour around whatever threat Max had detected. The dog led them in a wide arc, his attention never wavering from the suspicious patch of ground. As they circled to the east, Kai caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold, a nearly invisible ripple in the air, like heat rising from pavement on a hot day, but with a definite shape. A predator with some form of natural camouflage, perfectly blended with its surroundings. "Thornstalker," whispered Zinvra, who had noticed it too. "They're ambush predators, virtually undetectable until they strike." "And your dog sensed it," Jix added, a new respect in his voice. "Remarkable." Max remained vigilant until they were well past the hidden threat, only relaxing his posture when Kai gave him a reassuring pat and a quiet, "Good boy." They continued their trek, making good progress despite the alien terrain. Max proved invaluable, detecting and guiding them around 2 more thornstalkers and a patch of what Grax called burst spores, fungal growths that would have exploded on contact, releasing hallucinogenic toxins. "Your beast is useful," Grax acknowledged grudgingly after the third such avoidance. "I'm beginning to understand why your species keeps them." "He's not just useful," Kai corrected. "He's a companion, a friend. The utility is secondary to the bond." Sinvra's wings buzzed thoughtfully inside her suit. "This concept of interspecies friendship is alien to most coalition races. We have symbiotic relationships, certainly, but emotional attachments to non-sentient species. It's uniquely Terran. Perhaps that uniqueness is why humans might be valuable to the Seventh," suggested Jix. "Different perspectives often yield innovative solutions." Their conversation was cut short by a distant rumble that they could feel more than hear, a deep vibration that shook the ground beneath their feet. "Evolutionary storm," Grax said grimly. "Moving this way. We need to find cover now." They found shelter in a shallow cave formed by the twisted roots of what appeared to be an enormous calcified tree. As they huddled in its protective embrace, the world outside was transformed by cascading waves of energy that illuminated the crimson landscape with flashes of blue-white lightning. "How long do these storms typically last?" Kai asked, watching in fascination as a nearby patch of sentinel vines visibly thickened and sprouted barbed thorns in response to the energy surge. "Unpredictable," Grax replied. "Could be minutes, could be hours." Max pressed close to Kai's side, clearly unsettled by the storm. Kai placed a reassuring hand on the dog's back, feeling the tension in his muscles. "It's all right, buddy," he murmured. "Just a light show." Jix's bioluminescence pulsed with interest. "The bond between you is palpable. Does he understand your words, or merely your tone?" "Both, to varying degrees," Kai explained, glad for the distraction of conversation. "Dogs can learn to recognize hundreds of words, but they're even better at reading emotions and body language. Max and I have been together since he was a puppy, about 6 Earth years now. We've developed a sort of shorthand." "And he would die for you," Zinvra observed. It wasn't a question. Kai's hand tightened involuntarily on Max's back. "Yes, and I for him. That's the nature of the bond." Grax made a sound like stones grinding together, the Petrosian equivalent of a thoughtful hum. "My species reproduces by fission once every century. We have no concept of family as most races understand it. This attachment you describe is fascinating, if incomprehensible to me." "It's not so different from the loyalty you feel to your squadron," Kai suggested. "You'd risk your life for them, wouldn't you?" "That is duty," Grax countered. "Pragmatic cooperation for mutual survival and mission success." "Is it, though?" Kai pressed.
Or have you simply rationalized emotional bonds as tactical advantages? Before Grax could respond, Max suddenly raised his head, ears swiveling toward the cave entrance.
Something's coming, Kai warned, immediately reaching for his pulse rifle. The others followed suit, weapons raised toward the storm-lit opening.
For several tense seconds, they saw nothing.
Then, a shadow detached itself from the swirling energy outside. A low, six-legged creature with a segmented body and a head that seemed to be mostly mouth, lined with concentric rows of teeth.
Nexian crawler, whispered Sinvra.
They hunt during storms when prey is sheltering. The creature paused at the cave entrance, its eyeless head sweeping from side to side as if tasting the air. It had no visible sensory organs, yet it clearly knew they were there. Max's growl was barely audible over the storm, but the vibration of it traveled through the cave floor. The crawler's head snapped in their direction. "Hold fire," Grax ordered softly. "It may move on if it doesn't perceive us as easy prey." For a moment, it seemed his prediction might prove correct. The crawler took a hesitant step backward, as if reassessing the potential threat. Then, with shocking speed, it lunged forward, not toward the group, but directly at Max, perhaps perceiving the dog as the smallest and weakest target. What happened next occurred so quickly that Kai would later have trouble recounting the exact sequence of events. Max, far from cowering, launched himself forward to meet the threat head-on. There was a blur of motion, a sound like tearing fabric, and suddenly the crawler was thrashing on the cave floor with Max's jaws locked around what passed for its throat. The aliens watched in stunned silence as dog and alien predator grappled. Despite the crawler's additional limbs and size advantage, it couldn't dislodge Max, who had positioned himself perfectly to avoid the creature's snapping jaws while maintaining his own killing grip. After a brief but intense struggle, the crawler went limp. Max released it and backed away, returning to Kai's side with efficient movements that belied the violence of the encounter. Besides a tear in his protective suit near the shoulder, which Kai immediately moved to patch with a sealant from his kit, the dog appeared unharmed.
"By the cosmic void," breathed Jix, his glow flickering with excitement.
"Your companion just killed a Nexian crawler in single combat." "I've seen veteran Draconian warriors injured by those creatures," added Zinvra, her wings buzzing in agitation. "Your dog dispatched it like it was prey." Kai finished sealing Max's suit and checked him for injuries, finding none. "Good boy," he said simply. Max responded with a quick lick to Kai's helmet, a gesture that would have been affectionate if it hadn't been blocked by their protective gear. Grax had moved to examine the dead crawler. "Clean kill," he noted, a new respect in his voice. "Your beast, Max, he's a trained combat unit?" "No more than any working dog," Kai explained, feeling a surge of pride. German shepherds were bred as herding dogs originally, then later selected for police and military work because of their intelligence, loyalty, and courage. Max has had specialized training, but most of what you just saw is instinct and the desire to protect. "Protect you," Zinvra clarified. "Protect all of us," Kai corrected. "He considers us his pack now." The three aliens exchanged glances that Kai couldn't quite interpret. "The storm is passing," Grax finally said, turning toward the cave entrance where the flashes of energy were indeed becoming less frequent. "We should move on. The research outpost is still 3 kilometers away." As they gathered their equipment and prepared to depart, Kai noticed a subtle change in the team's dynamics. The aliens moved differently around Max now, not with fear or wariness, but with a newfound respect. And when they set out again, their formation had shifted. Max was no longer relegated to the rear with Kai, but instead took up a position at the front alongside Grax, his keen senses becoming the team's first line of warning against the dangers of Nexus 9. They reached the abandoned research outpost as darkness began to fall, a process that occurred with alarming speed on Nexus 9, as if someone had simply flipped a switch from day to night. The facility was a standard Coalition prefab structure, designed to be easily erected and, if necessary, abandoned just as easily when research was complete or conditions became untenable. "Life support should still be functional," Grax said as they approached the airlock. "We can rest here for a few hours before proceeding to the extraction point." The outer door yielded to Grax's authorization code, sliding open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The team entered the small decontamination chamber, waiting as scanners assessed them for potential contaminants. "All clear," announced the facility's AI after a moment. "Welcome to Outpost Nexus 9C. This facility has been in standby mode for 47 standard days." The inner door opened, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Emergency lighting activated as they entered, illuminating a space that showed signs of a hasty evacuation. Equipment left unpacked, personal items scattered, a half-eaten meal still on a table in what appeared to be a common area.
"What happened here?" Kai asked, noting the disarray.
"Exactly what's happening now," Grax replied. "A qualification test that went wrong. The previous team encountered something unexpected during their trial. Most made it out, but 2 were lost." "You're using a site where people died as a training ground?" Kai couldn't keep the disapproval from his voice.
"War isn't safe, human," Grax rumbled.
"The 7th goes where others cannot or will not. If you can't handle the reality of what that means, perhaps you should reconsider your application." Before Kai could respond, Max let out a low whine, a sound that immediately captured his attention. The dog was staring intently down a darkened corridor that branched off from the main room.
"What is it, boy?"
Kai moved to Max's side, rifle raised cautiously. Zinvra consulted a holographic map projected from her wrist device. "That leads to the main laboratory. It's where we'll find the data crystal we're supposed to retrieve." "Something's wrong," Kai said, noting Max's continued alertness. "He senses a threat." Jix's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. The facility was secured before abandonment. Nothing from outside could have entered. "Unless it was already inside when they sealed it," Kai pointed out. Grax hefted his heavy pulse cannon. "Only one way to find out. Standard sweep formation. The human and his beast take points since they detected it." They proceeded down the corridor cautiously, with Max leading the way. The dog moved with practiced precision, pausing occasionally to sniff at the air vents or the edges of doorways. Kai followed close behind, weapon ready, interpreting Max's subtle signals for the team. "He's tracking something," Kai whispered. "Something that's been moving through the ventilation system." The corridor ended at a sealed laboratory door. According to Zinvra's map, the data crystal would be inside, in a secure storage unit. "I don't like this," Jix murmured, his glow now pulsing in an agitated rhythm. "The previous team's logs mentioned something about an unexpected specimen reaction before communications were lost." "Specimen?" Kai questioned. "This outpost was researching evolutionary adaptations," Grax explained. "They would have had various Nexian life forms in containment for study." "Great," Kai muttered. "And we're just going to walk in there and hope whatever got loose isn't still hungry?" "That's why your beast is useful," Grax said pragmatically. "Better it triggers any ambush than one of us." Kai felt a flare of anger. "Max isn't expendable bait. He's part of this team." "Calm yourself, human," Grax rumbled. "I meant no offense. Your creature has proven its combat capabilities. I merely acknowledge its superior sensory advantages." Kai wasn't entirely satisfied with the explanation but let it go as Zinvra input the access code for the laboratory door. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a large circular room filled with scientific equipment. Workstations ringed the perimeter, many still displaying data on holographic screens. In the center stood a cluster of containment units, transparent cylinders designed to house specimens in carefully controlled environments. Most of the units were empty or damaged. One, however, remained intact but empty, its door hanging open. A warning label identified it as having contained a Stage 3 evolved Nexian morphling. "What's a morphling?" Kai asked, not liking the sound of it. "A shapeshifter," Zinvra explained, her wings buzzing nervously despite the constraints of her suit. "They absorb genetic material from other organisms, and can temporarily mimic their form and some basic behaviors." "How temporarily?" Kai pressed. "Hours, sometimes days," she replied. "It depends on the complexity of the organism being mimicked." Max had gone completely still, his attention fixed on the far side of the laboratory where shadows gathered between banks of equipment. "I think we're about to find out firsthand," Kai said, indicating Max's stance. "Something's hiding over there." Grax raised his weapon. "Jix, secure the data crystal. Zinvra, watch our backs. The human and I will investigate." Jix moved toward a secure terminal near the center of the room, while Zinvra positioned herself to cover the door they'd entered through. Kai and Grax advanced cautiously toward the shadowed area, with Max slightly ahead, his body tense and alert. The attack when it came wasn't from the shadows but from above. A dark shape dropped from an access panel in the ceiling, landing directly between them and Jix. It resembled a Nexian crawler but larger, and with disturbing modifications. Additional limbs, a more elongated body, and what appeared to be rudimentary wings still in the process of forming. "Morphling!" shouted Zinvra. "It's evolving!" The creature let out a high-pitched screech and lunged toward Jix, who was closest to its position. Before it could reach him, Max intercepted, slamming into the creature's side with enough force to knock it off course. What followed was chaos.
The morphling recovered quickly and engaged Max in a whirlwind of teeth, claws, and thrashing limbs. Kai and Grax attempted to get clear shots, but the combatants moved too quickly, their forms blurring together in a deadly dance. "Max, break off!" Kai shouted, desperate to create an opening for a clean shot. To his surprise and relief, Max immediately disengaged, leaping backward to create distance between himself and the morphling. In that brief window of opportunity, Grax fired his pulse cannon, the energy blast catching the creature mid-lunge and slamming it against a bank of equipment. The morphling, however, proved incredibly resilient. Despite a smoking wound in its side, it regained its feet almost immediately. But now, instead of attacking, it stared at Max with what could only be described as calculated interest. Its body began to ripple and shift, appendages retracting, form compressing. "It's mimicking!" Zinvra warned. "Take it down now!" Kai fired his pulse rifle, but the morphling was already changing, its shape blurring as it rapidly reconfigured itself. By the time his shots reached it, the transformation was complete, and they found themselves facing a second German Shepherd, identical to Max in every detail save for the wound in its side. The fake Max bared its teeth and growled, the sound a perfect imitation of the real dog's warning call. For a moment, the laboratory froze in a tableau of confusion and tension, two identical canines facing each other across the room. "Which one is which?" Jix asked, his glow flickering with alarm. Kai hesitated, his weapon shifting between the two identical dogs. The resemblance was uncanny. Same size, same markings, even the same tear in the protective suit that Kai had patched earlier. "Max!" Kai called, keeping his voice steady. "Come." Both dogs took a step forward simultaneously, then stopped, watching each other. Their postures were mirror images, alert, tense, ready to attack. "Shoot them both," Grax suggested pragmatically. "We can't risk the morphling escaping." "Absolutely not," Kai snapped. "There has to be a way to tell them apart." Zinvra's wings buzzed thoughtfully inside her suit. Morphlings can copy physical appearance perfectly, but they can't replicate complex behaviors or memories. They only absorb basic instincts and responses. Kai nodded slowly, an idea forming. "Then we test them." He lowered his weapon slightly and locked eyes with both dogs. "Max, Zane Schritt zurück und sitz." One of the dogs immediately backed up exactly 10 steps and sat at attention. The other hesitated, then awkwardly attempted to mimic the action, but only managed a few steps before sitting. Kai's rifle snapped up, targeting the second dog. "That's the morphling. Max is trained in German commands. 10 steps back and sit." A morphling couldn't have known that. The fake Max snarled, its form already beginning to shift as it realized its cover was blown. Grax didn't hesitate. His pulse cannon fired, the blast catching the creature mid-transformation. This time, the shot was more precisely placed, hitting what passed for the morphling's head. The creature convulsed once, then collapsed, its form reverting to a shapeless, gelatinous mass. "Impressive thinking, human," Grax acknowledged. "Your bond with the beast saved both your lives." The real Max trotted back to Kai's side, seemingly unperturbed by the encounter with his doppelganger. Kai knelt to check him for injuries, finding only minor scratches that hadn't penetrated his protective suit. "I've secured the data crystal," Jix announced, holding up a small, glowing object. "Mission objective accomplished. Now we just need to reach the extraction point." "We should rest first," Zinvra suggested. "This facility is secure now that the morphling is eliminated, and we all need to recover our strength before facing Nexus 9's nighttime predators." Grax considered this, then nodded. 4 hours of rest, then we move out. The human takes first watch with his beast. While the others rested, Kai sat near the main entrance of the outpost, rifle across his knees with Max lying alert beside him. The dog's head was up, ears swiveling occasionally to track sounds too faint for Kai to detect. "You did good back there, buddy," Kai murmured, scratching behind Max's ears. "Showing off for the aliens, huh?" Max's tail thumped once against the floor in response. "Lieutenant Bennett," came Shinvra's voice as she approached, her steps deliberately loud enough to announce her presence. "May I join you?" "Of course," Kai nodded. "I thought you were resting." "My species requires less sleep than yours," she explained, settling into a cross-legged position nearby. Her translucent wings were visible now that she'd removed her environmental suit within the safety of the outpost. They caught the dim emergency lighting, refracting it into subtle rainbow patterns on the walls. "I am curious about something." "Ask away," Kai invited. "Your bond with Max," she began, her wings fluttering slightly in what Kai had come to recognize as a sign of intellectual interest. "It's clearly deeper than mere utility. You said earlier that he would die for you, and you for him. Yet by your own admission, his species was originally bred by yours for specific tasks. Does that not make your relationship inherently unequal? Kai considered the question, appreciating its philosophical depth. Domestication was originally a utilitarian arrangement, yes, but over thousands of years it evolved into something much more complex. Dogs and humans co-evolved. We shaped them, but they also shaped us. How so? Zinvra tilted her head, genuinely curious. Some anthropologists believe that humans developed our capacity for empathy and complex social bonds, partly through our relationship with dogs, Kai explained. They helped us hunt, protected our camps, warned us of danger, but they also taught us about unconditional loyalty and affection. There's evidence that human settlements with dogs thrived better than those without. A symbiotic relationship, then, she mused. But still, they serve you. Do they? Kai smiled slightly. Sometimes I wonder who's really in charge. We feed them, shelter them, care for them when they're sick. We organize our lives around their needs. Is that service or partnership? Maybe both. Max had been watching their conversation with interest. Now he stood, stretched, and moved to sit between them, leaning slightly against Kai's leg. What does he get from your bond? Zinvra asked, carefully extending a hand toward Max. The dog sniffed her fingers curiously. Security, companionship, purpose, Kai listed. Dogs are pack animals by nature. They're hardwired to form social bonds. Without them, they suffer, physically and psychologically. In a way, they need the relationship as much as we do, just for different reasons. Fascinating, Zinvra murmured, cautiously stroking Max's head. The dog's eyes half closed in contentment. In my culture, we maintain strict boundaries between sentient and non-sentient life. The idea of forming an emotional attachment to another species would be considered peculiar. Humans form attachments to everything, Kai chuckled. We name our vehicles, talk to our plants, anthropomorphize our computers. It's how we make sense of the world. And you believe this tendency has value? She pressed. It's not merely a quirk or weakness. It's one of our greatest strengths, Kai said firmly. Empathy, the ability to project ourselves into another's experience, drives our innovation, our art, our scientific inquiry. It's what made us reach for the stars in the first place. The desire to understand what's different from us. Zinvra was silent for a long moment, her fingers still gently stroking Max's fur. Perhaps, she finally said, that is why the Coalition needs humans, despite your physical fragility. You see connections where we see only categories. Before Kai could respond, Max suddenly lifted his head, ears pricked forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Something's out there, Kai said, immediately alert. He reached for his rifle. Zinvra rose fluidly to her feet, her wings extending to their full span in a defensive posture. Should we wake the others? Not yet, Kai whispered, moving toward one of the reinforced windows that overlooked the terrain surrounding the outpost. Let's assess the threat first. What they saw outside sent a chill down Kai's spine. The crimson landscape was now alive with movement. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of small, phosphorescent creatures swarming toward the outpost like a glowing tide. Nexian night swarmers, Zinvra identified them, her voice tense. They hunt in coordinated packs. Are they a serious threat? Kai asked, watching as the creatures, each about the size of a rat, but with multiple limbs and elongated tooth-filled mouths, surrounded the facility. Individually, no. Collectively. She trailed off meaningfully. The outpost's exterior should hold against them, but if they find a way in... A metallic screech from somewhere in the ventilation system interrupted her. Max's growl deepened, his attention now fixed on an air vent near the ceiling. I think they already have, Kai said grimly. Wake the others, now! Remind me again, Kai shouted over the chaos of screeching swarmers and pulse fire. Why a research outpost on a death planet has ventilation shafts large enough for predators to crawl through? Blame the consortium architects, Grax rumbled, his massive pulse cannon decimating clusters of the glowing creatures as they poured from a vent. Always form over function. The team had fortified their position in the central laboratory, sealing as many access points as possible. But the swarmers were resourceful and persistent, finding new entry points faster than they could be secured. The extraction point is still 8 kilometers away, Jix reported, his bioluminescence pulsing rapidly with stress as he checked their route on a holographic map. And dawn is 4 hours off. If we leave now, we'll be facing these creatures in the open. If we stay, we'll be overwhelmed, countered Zinvra, using her wings to create bursts of air that knocked back groups of approaching swarmers. Their numbers are increasing exponentially. Max was a blur of motion, intercepting any swarmers that got past the team's defensive fire. The dog worked with mechanical precision, dispatching the creatures with quick, efficient movements that belied their mutual alienness. Kai's mind raced through their options, analyzing and discarding possibilities. Then a memory surfaced, something from his xenobiology training at the academy. "They're photosensitive," he exclaimed. "The bioluminescence isn't just for navigation, it's a communication system. They coordinate their attacks through light patterns." Grax caught on immediately. "So if we disrupt the pattern, we might confuse them long enough to break through," Kai finished. "Jix, can you modulate your bioluminescence to mimic their signaling?" The luminary's glow brightened with understanding. "Theoretically, yes, but I would need to observe their patterns long enough to replicate them convincingly." "I'll cover you," Kai decided. "Get as close as you safely can and study them. The rest of us will hold this position." What followed was a tense waiting game. While Grax and Zinvra maintained a perimeter defense, and Max continued to intercept breakthroughs, Kai escorted Jix to an observation point near a large ventilation grate where the swarmers were massing. The luminary stood motionless, his natural glow dimmed to near invisibility as he absorbed the nuances of the creature's light-based communication. "Fascinating," Jix murmured after several minutes. "It's not just light. There's a quantum entanglement component. They're sharing positional information faster than light could carry it." "Can you replicate it or not?" Kai pressed, pulse rifle never wavering from the mass of writhing, glowing bodies. "I believe so," Jix nodded. "But I'll need to broadcast at maximum intensity. It will drain my energy reserve significantly." "Do what you have to," Kai urged. "We're running out of time." They returned to the main group and quickly explained the plan. It was risky. Jix would attempt to broadcast a dispersal signal, hopefully confusing the swarmers long enough for the team to break through to the exterior. From there, they would make a run for the extraction point, using the confusion to gain a head start. "Ready?" Kai asked, checking that everyone was in position. Max stood at his side, alert and prepared. At their nods, he turned to Jix. "Now!" The luminary's body suddenly blazed with light, so intense that the others had to shield their eyes. The patterns were hypnotic, rapid pulses, swirling configurations, and staccato flashes that mimicked but subtly altered the swarmers' own communications. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the coordination of the attacking creatures began to falter. Their movements became erratic, conflicting. Some retreated back into the ventilation system while others turned on each other in confusion. "It's working!" Zinvra exclaimed. "We need to move now before they reorganize." Grax took point, his massive form clearing a path through the disoriented swarmers. Zinvra followed, then Jix, his light still pulsing but noticeably dimmer as his energy reserves depleted. Kai and Max brought up the rear, ensuring nothing approached from behind. They fought their way to the main airlock, dispatching confused swarmers as they went. By the time they reached it, Jix's glow had dimmed to a barely visible flicker. "Can't maintain much longer," the luminary gasped as Grax worked to override the airlock protocols. "Just a few more seconds," Kai encouraged, helping to support Jix's weakening form. "You're doing great." The outer door finally slid open, revealing the crimson night beyond. They could see swarmers still circling the facility, but their movements were chaotic, uncoordinated. "Go!" Grax ordered. "Head for the ridgeline. Don't stop for anything." They burst from the outpost at a run, Grax in the lead with Zinvra supporting the drained Jix. Kai and Max covered their flanks, intercepting any swarmers that managed to overcome their confusion and attack. The team moved with desperate speed across the alien landscape, illuminated only by the distant flashes of evolutionary storms and the ambient glow of Nexus 9's strange vegetation. Behind them, the swarmers' disorganization was gradually resolving, their collective intelligence reasserting itself. "They're regrouping!" Zinvra called out, her enhanced vision detecting the shift in the creature's behavior. "We have minutes at most!" "There!" Grax pointed toward a formation of crystalline structures jutting from the crimson soil ahead. "Those silicon spires. The swarmers avoid them. Something in the mineral composition disrupts their sensory systems." They altered course, making for the glittering structures. The crystals grew more numerous as they approached, forming a dense forest of razor-sharp spires that rose from knee-height to towering columns 3 times Grax's considerable height. "Careful," the Petrosian warned as they entered the formation. "These can slice through environmental suits with ease." They picked their way through the crystal forest, the need for caution slowing their pace considerably. Behind them, the first wave of reorganized swarmers approached the perimeter of the crystal field, then stopped abruptly, their bioluminescence pulsing with what might have been frustration. "It's working," Jix observed, his own glow beginning to recover slightly with rest. "But they're not giving up. They're spreading out to surround the field." "Smart little bastards," muttered Kai. "They're cutting off our exit routes." As if to confirm his assessment, they soon found swarmers circling the entire perimeter of the crystal formation, their lights forming a glowing boundary that slowly contracted as they found paths to infiltrate between the spires. "We're being hunted," Zinvra said unnecessarily, "and dawn is still hours away." Max had been systematically scouting ahead, returning periodically to guide the group through the safest paths among the crystals. Now he returned from one such expedition with an urgency in his movements that immediately captured Kai's attention. "He's found something," Kai translated. "Follow him." Max led them deeper into the crystal forest, where the spires grew so dense and tall that they formed a glittering canopy overhead, blocking out much of the night sky. In the center of this natural cathedral, they discovered a smooth depression in the ground, a perfect circle about 10 meters in diameter where no crystals grew. "What is this place?" Zinvra wondered, her wings buzzing curiously. Grax knelt to examine the soil. "It's different here. Higher mineral content, traces of something organic." He looked up, a rare expression of surprise on his rocky features. "This is a nest." "A nest for what?" Kai asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. As if in response, a low, resonant hum began to vibrate through the crystal forest. The sound built slowly, harmonics bouncing between the spires until it surrounded them completely. Not threatening, but unmistakably alive and aware. "Nexian Crystal Guardian," whispered Jix, his glow dimming in automatic deference. "I thought they were mythical." "Apparently not," Kai replied, signaling Max to stay close as the humming intensified. The crystals around them began to glow with an internal light, pulsing in patterns far more complex than the swarmers' simple signals. The effect was mesmerizing, waves of light traveling through the forest in mathematical progressions that seemed to convey meaning beyond language. "It's communicating," Jix realized, his own bioluminescence unconsciously synchronizing with the patterns. "Not with words, but with mathematical concepts, spatial relationships?" Max whined softly, pressing against Kai's leg. The dog wasn't frightened, Kai noted, but rather seemed overwhelmed by sensory input, as if he too could perceive something in the crystal's resonance that eluded human understanding. "Can you interpret any of it?" Grax asked Jix, his pragmatic nature asserting itself even in this mystical moment. The luminary was silent for a long moment, his glow fluctuating as he attempted to process the crystal language. Finally he spoke, his voice distant and dreamy. "It's aware of us, and of the swarmers. It's been observing our journey." Jix turned slowly in place, addressing the glowing forest. "It's curious about our bond, our cooperation despite our differences." "Is it friendly?" Zinvra pressed, her wings twitching nervously. "Not friendly or unfriendly," Jix corrected. "It exists on a different conceptual plane. Our survival is an interesting problem to it, a mathematical exercise." "Great," Kai muttered. "We're homework for a sentient crystal forest." As if responding to his sarcasm, the humming changed pitch, and the light patterns shifted. The circle where they stood began to glow with a soft, blue-white luminescence that was distinctly different from the crimson hues that dominated Nexus 9. "It's offering protection," Jix translated, wonder in his voice. "If we remain within the circle until dawn, it will keep the swarmers at bay." Sure enough, they could see the glow of swarmer clusters retreating from the intensifying light of the crystal forest. The creatures seemed reluctant, their own bioluminescence flaring in what might have been alarm or confusion. "Why would it help us?" Grax asked suspiciously. "What does it gain?" "Information," Jix suggested. "The opportunity to study different life forms. Or perhaps—" He hesitated, his glow pulsing thoughtfully. "Perhaps it finds our cooperation intriguing, our symbiosis despite our fundamental differences." Kai looked down at Max, who had relaxed now, sitting calmly at his side as the crystal light played over his fur. "Like humans and dogs," he murmured. "Yes," Jix nodded. "The Guardian seems particularly interested in your bond with Max. It's studying you both. The connection between you." "Well," Kai sighed, lowering himself to sit cross-legged on the glowing ground. "I guess we're spending the night in a sentient crystal nest while being psychically examined by a mathematical entity. Just another day in the 7th Squadron." Max circled once, then settled against Kai's side with a contented sigh, apparently accepting their strange sanctuary without reservation. The others followed suit, arranging themselves within the protective circle. As they settled in for their unusual vigil, the crystal forest continued its symphony of light and sound around them. A complex, alien intelligence, contemplating the equally alien concept of interspecies friendship. Dawn broke over Nexus 9 with the same abruptness as nightfall. A sudden transition from darkness to light, as the planet's strange sun crested the jagged horizon. The crystal forest, which had glowed with its own inner luminescence throughout the night, now caught and refracted the morning light, transforming into a dazzling spectacle of rainbow hues. Kai awoke to find Max already alert and watching the perimeter of their sanctuary. The swarmers had vanished with the daylight, retreating to whatever dark recesses sheltered them during Nexus 9's harsh days. "Anything interesting happen while I was asleep?" Kai asked Zinvra, who had taken the last watch. Her wings fluttered in the equivalent of a shrug. The Crystal Guardian continued its light patterns until about an hour before dawn. Then it just faded. Not gone, but dormant somehow. Grax was already on his feet, checking his equipment. "The extraction point is still 5 kilometers north. If we maintain a steady pace, we should reach it before midday." They broke camp quickly, preparing to leave their crystalline sanctuary. As they reached its edge, Jix paused, turning back toward the center of the formation. His glow pulsed in a complex pattern, an attempt to communicate gratitude, Kai realized. There was no response from the crystal forest, at least none that they could perceive. But as they made their way carefully between the razor-sharp spires, Kai couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being observed, evaluated. They emerged from the crystal forest into the crimson daylight of Nexus 9, orienting themselves toward their final destination. "The terrain ahead is more exposed," Grax warned, consulting his map. "Less cover means we'll be visible to any airborne predators." "But better visibility for us as well," Zinvra pointed out. "We'll see threats coming." They set off at a brisk pace, with Max once again taking point alongside Grax. The dog had fully integrated into their formation now, his role as scout and early warning system acknowledged without question. The landscape gradually changed as they traveled north, the crimson soil giving way to a strange, mottled terrain where patches of iridescent, moss-like growth competed with crystalline formations similar to the forest they'd left behind, though smaller and more scattered. "Evolutionary boundary zone," Jix explained when Kai asked about the change. "Different environmental pressures create distinct biological niches. We're moving from one zone to another." Their progress was steady, but cautious. Twice, Max alerted them to hidden dangers. Once a cluster of what Zinvra called burst pods, explosive fungal growths that released hallucinogenic spores, and later a camouflaged pit trap created by some burrowing predator. "Your beast has saved us hours of detours," Grax acknowledged gruffly. "Perhaps even our lives." "All part of the service," Kai replied with a small smile, giving Max an appreciative pat as the dog returned from scouting ahead. They were roughly 2 kilometers from the extraction point when disaster struck. The ground beneath their feet, which had seemed solid and stable, suddenly shifted, revealing itself to be not ground at all but a living entity, a vast predator that had been lying in wait beneath a perfectly crafted camouflage of soil and native vegetation. "Land Kraken!" Zinvra shouted as tentacle-like appendages erupted from the false terrain, whipping toward them with frightening speed. The team scattered, their formation dissolving into individual evasive actions. Grax fired his pulse cannon at what appeared to be the central mass of the creature, while Zinvra took to the air, her wings carrying her just high enough to avoid the grasping tentacles. Kai rolled to avoid one appendage only to find another sweeping toward him from the opposite direction. Before he could react, Max was there, teeth sinking into the fleshy tentacle. The creature emitted a high-pitched keening sound, and the tentacle recoiled. "Its nervous system is distributed," Jix called out, his bioluminescence flashing rapidly as he dodged between writhing appendages. "Central hits won't stop it!" Kai processed this information quickly. "Target the tentacles then. Each one is semi-autonomous." He demonstrated by firing a concentrated burst from his pulse rifle at the base of a tentacle that was threatening Jix. The appendage convulsed and went limp, though the rest of the creature continued its frenzied attack. The team adapted their tactics, focusing fire on individual tentacles rather than trying to hit the main body. It was working. Gradually, they were neutralizing the threat limb by limb. Then Kai heard Max yelp in pain. Spinning around, he saw that one of the tentacles had coiled around the dog's midsection, lifting him into the air. Max struggled fiercely, but the creature's grip was too strong.
Max!
Kai shouted, already moving toward his companion. Without hesitation, he dropped his rifle and drew his combat knife, charging directly at the tentacle that held Max. It was reckless, bordering on suicidal, but Kai wasn't thinking tactically anymore. All he could focus on was the sound of Max's distress and the need to reach him. The tentacle swung Max toward Kai as if using the dog as a weapon. Kai ducked beneath the swing and slashed upward with his knife, severing partially through the fleshy appendage. Ichor sprayed from the wound, coating Kai's visor with foul-smelling fluid. Temporarily blinded, Kai relied on instinct, continuing to hack at where he'd last seen the tentacle. He felt the resistance give way as his blade found its mark again, cutting deeper this time. The land kraken's keening rose to an ear-splitting shriek. The tentacle convulsed once more, then went completely limp, releasing Max. The dog fell heavily but managed to land on his feet, immediately putting himself between Kai and the next approaching tentacle.
Bennett!
Grax's voice cut through the chaos.
Get clear, now!
Wiping his visor enough to restore partial visibility, Kai saw that Grax had reconfigured his pulse cannon to a high-intensity setting, a modification that would produce a single, devastating blast at the cost of potentially overloading the weapon. Kai grabbed Max and ran, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the land kraken. Zinvra swooped down to assist, her stronger-than-she-looked form helping to support Kai as they retreated. Behind them, Grax took careful aim at what sensors had identified as a cluster of sensory organs near what passed for the creature's head. His shot had to count. There would be no second attempt. The pulse cannon discharged with a sound like thunder, releasing a blinding beam of concentrated energy that struck the land kraken precisely at its most vulnerable point. The creature's keening cut off abruptly, replaced by a gurgling death rattle as its massive form convulsed once, twice, then lay still. Grax discarded the now useless weapon, its power cells completely drained by the massive energy discharge. "Everyone still in one piece?" he called out, his gravelly voice betraying unusual concern. "We're okay," Kai confirmed, already checking Max for injuries. The dog's protective suit had been compromised, but the damage appeared superficial, bruising rather than anything life-threatening. "Max took a hit, but he'll be all right." "Your actions were unconventional," Grax said, approaching Kai. There was an odd note in his voice that Kai couldn't quite identify. "Abandoning your primary weapon to engage in close combat with a Class 3 predator violates standard tactical protocol." Kai straightened, ready to defend his decision. "Sir, It was also," Grax continued, "exactly what any of us would have done for a squadron mate." He extended a rocky hand toward Kai. "Well done, Lieutenant." Surprised, Kai accepted the handshake, the Petrosian's stone-like grip firm but careful not to crush his human bones. "The extraction point is just over that ridge," Jix reported, his glow pulsing with relief. "We're going to make it." As they crested the hill, they could see the distinctive shape of a Coalition transport vessel waiting on a flat stretch of terrain ahead. The sight filled Kai with a complex mixture of relief, pride, and, unexpectedly, a touch of regret that their ordeal was ending. "So," Zinvra said as they made their final approach to the transport, "do you think we passed Commander Zekthar's test?" Kai glanced down at Max, who walked confidently beside him despite his recent ordeal, then at the diverse team who had faced death together and emerged not just alive but bonded in ways that transcended their biological differences. "I think," he said with a smile, "we redefined the parameters of the test." Commander Zekthar's private office aboard the Coalition space station Nexus Prime was austere by most species standards. The insectoid officer had little use for decorative elements, preferring an environment that emphasized function over form. The only personal touch was a display case containing various exoskeletons, molted casings from his own developmental stages, preserved as reminders of his growth. Kai stood at attention before the commander's desk, freshly showered and in a clean uniform after 3 days of decontamination and medical checks following their return from Nexus 9. Max sat beside him, similarly pristine after his own thorough examination by the station's xenobiology department. "Lieutenant Bennett," Zekthar began, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully, "I've reviewed the reports from your qualification test, as well as the individual assessments from each team member." Kai remained silent, knowing that military protocol among insectoid species considered interrupting a superior officer a serious breach of etiquette. "Sergeant Grax reports that you demonstrated exceptional adaptability and unconventional problem-solving skills. Lieutenant Zinvra commends your intuitive understanding of interspecies communication dynamics, and Specialist Jix praises your capacity to form functional bonds across biological boundaries." the commander's compound eyes fixed on Kai. All quite impressive. Thank you, sir, Kai replied, maintaining his formal posture. However, Zekathar continued, I must address the matter of your companion. His gaze shifted to Max. The Coalition has no precedent for non-sentient support organisms within active squadrons. It violates at least 17 regulations regarding crew composition and environmental controls. Kai's heart sank, though he kept his expression neutral. I understand, sir. That said, the commander's mandibles clicked again. Regulations can be reinterpreted when circumstances warrant. The 7th Reconnaissance Squadron operates beyond the usual constraints of Coalition protocols. Our mandate is to succeed where conventional approaches fail. Zekathar rose from behind his desk, his 9-foot frame looming over Kai. Tell me, Lieutenant Bennett, in your assessment, does your canine companion constitute a tactical advantage that outweighs the logistical complications of his inclusion? Kai didn't hesitate. Absolutely, sir. Max's sensory capabilities alone provide intelligence that our technology can't match. His combat effectiveness has been demonstrated, and his presence has already facilitated improved interspecies communication within the team. Yes, Zekathar agreed, surprising Kai. I've noticed that as well. Sergeant Grax actually engaged in what approximated casual conversation yesterday. In 15 years of service together, I've never witnessed such behavior from him. The commander circled his desk, stopping directly in front of Kai and Max. Without warning, he lowered himself to a crouch, bringing his alien face level with the dog's. Max showed no fear, meeting the insectoid's compound gaze steadily. Remarkable, Zekathar murmured. He recognizes sentience across radical morphological differences, a valuable trait in our line of work. The commander straightened and returned to his desk. Very well, Lieutenant Bennett. You are officially assigned to the 7th Reconnaissance Squadron, effective immediately. He paused, mandibles clicking in what Kai had learned to recognize as amusement. And what was the term? Service animal? He is similarly commissioned with the equivalent rank of specialist. Kai blinked in surprise. Sir, Max is being commissioned? Is there a regulation against it? Zekathar challenged. I've checked thoroughly, Lieutenant. Coalition bylaws specify that squadron members must be sentient beings capable of contributing to mission objectives. They do not, in fact, specify that all members must communicate verbally or complete standardized testing. The commander's compound eyes seemed to glitter with what might have been mischief, an expression Kai would never have expected from the typically formal insectoid. Besides, Zekathar added, I've already submitted the paperwork. The administrative AIs had some initial objections, but I overrode them with my command authority. Specialist Max is now officially the first canine member of the Galactic Coalition Armed Forces. Kai fought to maintain his composure, but a smile broke through despite his efforts. Thank you, sir. We won't let you down. See that you don't, Zekathar replied, his tone returning to its usual briskness. Your first official mission begins in 48 hours. The details are classified until briefing, but I suggest you both rest while you can. Squadron assignments in the Orion Spur rarely include downtime. Kai saluted sharply. Understood, sir. As he turned to leave, Zekathar added almost casually, Oh, and Lieutenant? Special requisition forms for Specialist Max's dietary needs and equipment have been forwarded to your station terminal. I expect detailed specifications within 24 hours. Yes, sir. Kai nodded, fighting back another smile at the commander's unexpected thoroughness. Dismissed. Outside the commander's office, Kai knelt to Max's level, scratching behind the dog's ears with unabashed affection. Well, look at you, Specialist Max. Climbing the ranks faster than I did. Max's tail wagged enthusiastically, more in response to Kai's tone and body language than any comprehension of his new military status. I hope you realize what we've gotten ourselves into, Kai continued as they walked through the station corridors toward their newly assigned quarters. The 7th doesn't exactly get the easy missions. As if to illustrate this point, they passed a medical bay where several Coalition soldiers were undergoing treatment for injuries that appeared both extensive and exotic. One Draconian had what looked like crystalline growths protruding from his scales, while a luminary's natural glow flickered erratically between ultraviolet and infrared spectrums. Hey, Bennett? Called a familiar voice. Kai turned to see Sergeant Grax approaching, his rocky form impossible to mistake even in the busy corridor. Sergeant, Kai greeted him. I was just coming from Commander Zakathar's office. Looks like Max and I made the cut. Never doubted it, Grax rumbled, falling into step beside them. His granite-like features were difficult for most species to read, but Kai thought he detected something like satisfaction in the Petrosian's expression. Word travels fast on a station this size. The commander's decision to commission your beast has already become something of a legend in the mess hall. I can imagine. Kai chuckled. How are the others taking it? Zinvra is fascinated by the precedent it sets for interspecies integration. Jix is composing some kind of luminescent ode to your partnership. Grax's gravelly voice took on a hint of amusement. As for the rest of the squadron, opinions range from intrigued to skeptical, to outright betting on how long you'll both survive. And your opinion, Sergeant? Kai asked, genuinely curious. Grax was silent for a moment, his crystalline eyes fixed straight ahead. Finally, he said, "My species evolved in an environment where partnership was unnecessary for survival. We are, by nature, solitary beings. For most of my service, I believe this made us superior, uncompromised by emotional attachments or dependencies." He glanced down at Max, who was watching him with alert interest. "Your bond with this creature has challenged that assumption. During our mission, I observed how your mutual trust enhanced both your capabilities. Neither of you would have survived alone, yet together you achieved something greater than the sum of your parts." Coming from a Petrosian, a species renowned for their pragmatic, unsentimental worldview, this was tantamount to effusive praise. "Thank you, Sergeant," Kai said simply, recognizing the significance of Grax's words. They reached a junction in the corridor where they would part ways, Grax toward the training facilities, Kai and Max toward the residential sector. "The Malkori incursion," Grax said abruptly. "Sir?" Kai frowned, not recognizing the reference. "Our next mission," Grax clarified. "The commander will brief us officially tomorrow, but I thought you should have time to research it privately. The Malkori are challenging opponents, even by the 7th standards." Before Kai could thank him for the heads-up, the Petrosian had already turned and marched away, his crystalline form soon lost among the diverse crowd of Coalition personnel filling the station corridors. Their assigned quarters were Spartan but larger than Kai had expected, a main living area with attached sleeping alcove and a small hygiene station. Most notably, there was a separate area that had clearly been hastily modified for Max's comfort, complete with a cushioned platform that approximated a dog bed and built-in dispensers for water and presumably food once the requisition forms were processed. "Someone's been busy," Kai murmured, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the accommodations. As Max explored their new home, Kai activated the room's terminal and began researching the Malkori. What he found was both fascinating and deeply concerning. The Malkori weren't a species but a philosophical movement, or, depending on one's perspective, a cult. They believed in evolutionary acceleration through artificial means, viewing natural selection as too slow and inefficient. Their adherents were drawn from dozens of species across the galaxy, each undergoing voluntary genetic and cybernetic modifications to transcend their evolutionary limitations. What had begun as a fringe scientific community had gradually morphed into something more militant. Recent reports indicated that the Malkori had moved beyond voluntary enhancement to forced elevation of unwilling subjects, particularly on frontier worlds beyond direct Coalition jurisdiction. The most disturbing aspect, however, was their apparent success. Malkori ascendants displayed capabilities far beyond their original species parameters. Enhanced strength, unprecedented sensory acuity, accelerated healing, and in some cases entirely new biological functions. "Well, Max," Kai said, leaning back from the terminal as the dog settled at his feet. "Looks like our first mission is going to be against transhumanist zealots with superior biology. No pressure." Max yawned, seemingly unimpressed by the challenge. A soft chime indicated someone at their door. When Kai opened it, he found Lieutenant Zinvra hovering slightly above the threshold, her wings creating a barely audible hum. "Lieutenant Bennett," she greeted him formally, then relaxed into a more casual stance. "I hope I'm not interrupting your settling in." "Not at all," Kai invited her in with a gesture. "Max and I were just doing some research on our upcoming mission." Zinvra glided into the room, her feet never quite touching the floor, a common posture for her species in informal settings. "Ah, so Grax told you about the Malkori. I suspected he might. He's developing a surprising capacity for teamwork lately." Max trotted over to greet her, tail wagging. Without hesitation, Zinvra extended a hand to stroke his head, a marked change from her initial wariness around the dog. "I've brought something," she said, producing a small device from a pouch at her waist. "A modification for Specialist Max's environmental suit. It should improve the sensory input while maintaining protection integrity. Kai accepted the device, turning it over in his hands. It was elegantly designed, with an organic flow to its structure that was characteristic of her species' engineering aesthetic. "You made this?" he asked, impressed. "Designed it," she corrected. "Our fabrication units produced it. I've been studying Terran canine physiology since our return. Your species has extensive documentation on your companion animals. Quite fascinating, really." "Thank you," Kai said sincerely. "This is incredibly thoughtful." Sinvra's wings fluttered in what Kai had come to recognize as her version of modest embarrassment. "It's practical. The Seventh's missions often involve hostile environments. Maximizing Specialist Max's effectiveness is simply good tactics." But Kai sensed there was more to it than pragmatism. "How are the others reacting to having a dog in the squadron?" he asked, curious about the broader reception. "With great interest," she replied, settling into a hovering position that approximated sitting, though her feet remained several inches above the floor. "Your arrival has sparked something of a cultural exchange. Several crew members are researching Earth's history of animal partnerships. Some are even questioning whether similar bonds might be possible with species from their own worlds." "Really?" Kai was surprised by this ripple effect. "Indeed. Specialist Trill, you haven't met him yet, is from Aquarii Prime. His people have never domesticated animals, but they cultivate a species of semi-sentient aquatic plants. He's been wondering if a more complex relationship might be possible." Kai smiled, imagining the possibilities. "From pariah to trendsetter in one mission. Not bad, Max." The dog, hearing his name, looked up expectantly. "There's something else," Sinvra said, her tone growing more serious. "About the Malcury mission. There are rumors concerning their interest in Earth species." "What kind of interest?" Kai asked, immediately alert. "Your planet's evolutionary history is unique in several respects, particularly the co-evolution of humans with other mammals. The Malcury are reportedly fascinated by the potential of this evolutionary path." She hesitated. "Some intelligence suggests they may have acquired Terran specimens for their experiments." Kai felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying they might have taken dogs?" "Possibly. The intelligence is fragmentary." Her wings stilled, a sign of deep concern among her species. "I thought you should be prepared. This mission may be more personal than most." Kai's jaw tightened. The thought of the Malcury experimenting on dogs, or any Earth species, filled him with a cold anger. "Thank you for telling me." Sinvra rose, preparing to leave. At the door, she paused. "The Seventh looks after its own, Lieutenant. Whatever we find, you and Max won't face it alone." After she'd gone, Kai sat in contemplative silence, absently stroking Max's fur. The dog sensed his change in mood, pressing closer against his leg in wordless support. "Looks like we might be rescuing some of your cousins, buddy," Kai murmured. "Along with whatever other Earth species these Malcury have collected." Max looked up at him with complete trust, unaware of the complexities of their situation but fully committed to facing whatever came next together. Kai smiled despite his concerns. If there was one thing his bond with Max had taught him, it was that partnerships forged through mutual trust could overcome seemingly impossible odds. It was a lesson the Galactic Coalition was just beginning to learn, and one that might prove crucial in the challenges ahead. "Get some rest, Specialist," Kai told Max, heading for his own bunk. "Something tells me we're going to need it." As he drifted toward sleep, Kai reflected on how far they'd come, from being dismissed as a fragile mammal and his pet to becoming potentially vital assets in the Coalition's most elite reconnaissance unit. Whatever the Malcury mission held, whatever dangers awaited them in the vast, strange galaxy they now called their beat, they would face it as they had everything else. Together. The briefing room of the 7th Reconnaissance Squadron was designed to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of its multinational crew. Amphibious members could remain partially submerged in small tanks, while atmospheric breathers from various worlds benefited from localized environmental controls that maintained their preferred gas mixtures within personal bubbles. Kai sat between Grax and Sinvra, with Max settled attentively at his feet. Around the circular table sat 6 other squadron members, whom Kai had met only briefly during his first days on the station. A luminary communications specialist named Trill, whose bioluminescence pulsed in complex patterns. A pair of draconian twins whose scales shifted colors in perfect synchronization. A massive gelatinous morphic whose transparent body revealed complex circulatory and nervous systems in constant flux. A humanoid chronal whose movements occasionally blurred as they briefly shifted slightly out of phase with normal time. And a diminutive construct whose mechanical body housed a digital consciousness of mysterious origin. At exactly 0700 hour station time, Commander Zekthar entered, his insectoid form moving with precise, economical motions. The room immediately fell silent. Intelligence from the Outer Rim, the commander began without preamble, activating the holographic display in the center of the table. 3 cycles ago, the research vessel Galileo went silent while surveying the Malcury exclusion zone. The hologram showed a sleek ship of clearly Terran design, one of the new Explorer-class vessels that Earth had contributed to the Coalition's scientific fleet. The Galileo was specifically tasked with monitoring Malcury activity from a safe distance, Zekthar continued. No direct engagement was authorized. However, their final transmission indicated they had detected unusual energy signatures consistent with large-scale genetic manipulation. The display shifted to show a star chart with a pulsing red indicator deep in an unmapped sector. 46 hours ago, we received a partial distress signal from this location, a previously unknown Malcury facility on an uncharted moon. The signal was fragmented but contained verification codes matching the Galileo's science officer. Survivors? Grax asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Unknown, Zekthar replied. The signal was too degraded to determine personnel status. However, it did contain one clear data packet. The hologram changed again, displaying a fractured image that took Kai a moment to interpret. When he did, he felt his blood run cold. It showed what appeared to be a laboratory setting with various containment units visible in the background. Each unit housed a different Earth species. He could make out what looked like a wolf, several smaller mammals that might have been rats or rabbits, and in the foreground, unmistakably, a German shepherd not unlike Max. But these weren't normal animals. Even through the distorted image, Kai could see evidence of extensive modifications, unnatural muscle structures, modified limbs, and in the case of the dog, what appeared to be cybernetic implants along its spine. Beside him, Max growled softly, perhaps reacting to Kai's tension rather than any understanding of the image. The Malcury have apparently taken a particular interest in Terran species, Zekthar stated, confirming what Zinvra had already warned Kai about, especially those with historical symbiotic relationships with humans. They're trying to enhance the bonds, Kai realized aloud. Take what evolved naturally between humans and dogs and weaponize it somehow. Zikthar's mandibles clicked in affirmation. That is our assessment as well, Lieutenant. The Malcury believe that the coevolution of species creates unique potential for their enhancement philosophy. Earth's evolutionary history offers them a natural laboratory of sorts. And the Galileo stumbled upon this research, Zinvra surmised. Or was deliberately lured to it, suggested the Chronal, whose name Kai recalled was Eon. Their voice had an odd echo quality, as if reaching the present from both past and future simultaneously. The Malcury are not above using bait to acquire new subjects. The implication hung heavy in the air. If the Galileo's crew had been captured, they might already be undergoing the Malcury's forced elevation procedures. Our mission, Zekthar continued, is threefold. First, determine the status of the Galileo and rescue any survivors. Second, gather intelligence on the Malcury's Terran species research. And third, if possible, extract the experimental subjects for rehabilitation. The commander's compound eyes fixed on Kai. Lieutenant Bennett's expertise regarding Earth mammals, particularly canines, will be crucial to this operation's success. Kai nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about proving himself to the squadron anymore. Real lives, human and animal, hung in the balance. What's our insertion plan? Asked one of the Draconian twins, Vex or Vax. Kai wasn't yet able to tell them apart. In response, Zekthar expanded the holographic display to show the moon where the Malcury facility was located. Standard approach is impossible. The moon is surrounded by a detection grid that would identify any coalition vessel. Instead, we'll deploy via indirect means. The display zoomed in to show a massive asteroid passing near the moon. This near-lunar object will pass within 10,000 kilometers of the target in 30 hours. We will position our stealth transport in its shadow, then launch a short-range shuttle during closest approach. The debris field surrounding the asteroid should mask our signature until we're below the detection grid. That's an awfully narrow window, Grax noted, his crystalline eyes studying the projected flight path. 9 minutes from launch to atmospheric entry, Zekthar confirmed. The margin for error is minimal. And once we're on the ground? Kai asked. That, the commander said, is where Specialist Max's abilities become central to our strategy. All eyes turned to the German shepherd, who perked up at hearing his name. The Malcori facility is partly subterranean with multiple levels of security. External scans show electromagnetic shielding that will render most of our detection equipment useless once inside. However, Zekthar gestured to Max, Terran canines possess sensory capabilities that operate independently of our technology. Specialist Max's olfactory system can detect subtle chemical changes that no scanner could identify under electromagnetic interference. Kai found himself nodding. He can track the Galileo's crew by scent if we have reference samples, and he might be able to locate the experimental subjects through species recognition. Precisely, Zekthar confirmed. Additionally, the Malcori would have no defense protocols designed to counter a canine operative. Their security systems will be calibrated for conventional coalition infiltration tactics. The briefing continued for another hour, detailing equipment loadouts, team compositions, and extraction protocols. The 7th would divide into 3 operational groups: infiltration, intelligence gathering, and extraction medical support. Kai and Max were assigned to the infiltration team alongside Grax, Sinvra, and the construct operative designated Cypher, whose compact mechanical form was ideally suited for bypassing security systems. As the briefing concluded, Commander Zekthar addressed one final point. The Coalition Council has authorized this mission under extreme operational discretion. In simple terms, if you're captured, there will be no official acknowledgement or rescue attempt. The Malcori exclusion zone is politically sensitive territory. A direct Coalition military action could trigger wider conflicts that we are currently unprepared to manage. The commander's compound eyes swept the room. Is that understood? A chorus of affirmations followed, though Kai noticed Max watching the commander with what seemed like unusual intensity, as if the dog somehow grasped the gravity of what was being discussed. Good hunting, 7th Squadron, Zekthar concluded. Departure is in 20 hours. I suggest you make whatever personal preparations you deem necessary before then. The armory of the 7th Squadron resembled a museum of lethal technologies from across the galaxy. Weapons of every conceivable design lined the walls: energy projectors, kinetic accelerators, exotic matter manipulators, and even more primitive but often equally effective bladed instruments. Kai stood before a workbench, carefully checking the modifications to his standard-issue pulse rifle. Beside him, Max was being fitted with a new tactical harness, an upgraded version of his protective suit that incorporated Zinvra's sensory enhancements along with additional features specific to their mission. "Hold still, Specialist," murmured the armory's chief technician, a 6-armed hexapod named Wrench, who had initially seemed skeptical about fitting equipment to a canine, but had quickly warmed to the challenge. These neural interfaces need precise calibration. Max remained obediently motionless as Wrench adjusted small sensor pads along his spine and skull. The harness would allow limited data sharing between Max's sensory perceptions and the team's tactical network, not direct neural output, which was beyond current technology, but a simplified translation of his physiological responses to various stimuli. The squad will be able to tell when he detects something significant, Wrench explained to Kai. Changes in heart rate, respiration, muscle tension, all indicators of alert status. We've also incorporated reference pheromone samples from the Galileo's crew for comparison scanning. Will it hurt him? Kai asked, watching the procedure with a protective eye. Not in the slightest, Wrench assured him, 2 of his 6 hands gently stroking Max's back while the others worked on the calibration. The interface is completely non-invasive. Think of it as an extremely sophisticated heart rate monitor with some extra bells and whistles. Once the harness was properly fitted, Wrench stepped back to admire his work. Beautiful. A perfect integration of biology and technology, the first of its kind in Coalition service. Max shook himself briefly, as if testing the feel of the harness, then looked up at Kai with calm acceptance. Whatever strange equipment humans chose to put on him, his trust remained absolute. How does it look, buddy? Kai asked, kneeling to examine the harness more closely. In response, Max licked his face once, then sat at attention, ready for whatever came next. I'll take that as approval, Kai chuckled, rising to continue his own preparations. The armory door hissed open, admitting Grax's massive form. The Petrosian nodded to Wrench, then joined Kai at the workbench. Your beast, Specialist Max, is becoming quite the celebrity, Grax commented, picking up and examining Kai's modified pulse rifle with a critical eye. Word of his commission has spread to other stations. I've received 17 queries about Terran canine integration possibilities since yesterday. Really? Kai was surprised by the level of interest. From who? Various squadron commanders, 2 xenobiologists, and oddly enough, a consortium diplomat who breeds some kind of 6-legged reptiles on his homeworld. Grax handed the rifle back, apparently satisfied with its configuration. You've started something, Bennett. A paradigm shift in how the Coalition views interspecies cooperation. Coming from the typically stoic Petrosian, this was high praise indeed. Kai felt a surge of pride, both in Max and in the ripples their partnership was creating across the Coalition. I'm just glad the 7th gave us a chance, he said, checking the power cells on his sidearm. The 7th has always valued effectiveness over convention, Grax replied. It's why we survive missions that would decimate regular units. He paused, then added with uncharacteristic candor. Though I admit I didn't expect a Terran and his canine to demonstrate that principle quite so dramatically. Before Kai could respond, the Armory's communication panel chimed. Infiltration team to briefing room 3, came Commander Zak Thar's voice. Final mission parameters update. Grax straightened, instantly back to his formal self. Time to focus, Lieutenant. The Malkori are not to be underestimated. As they prepared to leave, Wrench approached with one final addition to Max's equipment. A small, surprisingly elegant device attached to the front of the harness. What's that? Kai asked. Squad designation badge, Wrench explained, activating the device. A small holographic emblem appeared, the insignia of the 7th Reconnaissance Squadron with Max's newly assigned identification code below it. Every member of the 7th wears one. It was the commander's specific instruction that Specialist Max be properly identified as a full squadron member. Kai stared at the badge, unexpectedly moved by this small but significant gesture of inclusion. Beside him, Max sat a little straighter, as if sensing the importance of the moment. Come on, Specialist, Kai said, clipping on his own squadron badge. We've got a mission to plan. The stealth transport glided silently through the void, its advanced dampening systems rendering it nearly invisible to both conventional scanners and visual detection. Inside, the infiltration team made final preparations as they approached the massive asteroid that would provide their cover for the critical insertion phase. Kai sat beside Max in the shuttle bay, running through equipment checks one last time. The dog wore his complete tactical harness now, the neural interfaces glowing with subtle blue indicators that showed the system was functioning correctly. Across from them, Zinvra was in deep meditation, a pre-mission ritual of her species that she claimed enhanced neural coordination for the challenges ahead. Her wings, normally in constant subtle motion, were perfectly still, folded against her back in a state of complete relaxation. Grax stood nearby, his crystalline form somehow even more rigid than usual, as he stared at the mission timer counting down on the bay's display wall. The Petrosian had been unusually quiet during the approach, which Kai had learned was a sign of intense focus rather than concern. The 5th member of their team, Cypher, was perhaps the strangest. A mechanical construct housing an artificial intelligence whose origins remained classified even within the squadron. The humanoid robot's face featured a simple display screen that showed changing patterns of light, rather than attempting to mimic organic expressions. Currently, it displayed a pulsing amber pattern that Kai had come to associate with analytical processing. Insertion window in 7 minutes, announced the transport's AI in a calm, neutral voice. Shuttle pre-launch sequence initiated. Zinvra's eyes opened, her meditation complete. Perfect timing, she murmured, stretching her wings briefly before refolding them within the confines of her tactical suit. The bay doors opened to reveal the shuttle, a compact, angular craft designed for stealth rather than comfort. Its matte black surface absorbed rather than reflected light, making it difficult to focus on directly. Final equipment check, Grax ordered as they moved toward the craft. Each team member verified their gear, from weapons to specialized infiltration tools to the medical kits that might prove vital if they found Galileo survivors. Max underwent a final harness diagnostic, the results displaying on Kai's wrist unit, all systems optimal. As they boarded the shuttle, Commander Zekthar's voice came through their comms. Infiltration team, be advised that long-range scans have detected increased activity at the Malkori facility. Something has them on alert. Could they know we're coming? Kai asked, securing Max in his specialized harness beside the pilot's seat. Unlikely, Zakthar replied. More probable is that their experiments have reached a critical phase. Intel suggests they operate on accelerated timetables once subjects are acquired. The implication was clear. If Galileo's crew had been captured for experimentation, time was even more limited than they'd anticipated. Understood, Commander, Grax acknowledged. We'll adapt accordingly. The 7th always does, came Zekathar's response, followed by the squadron's unofficial motto. Impossible is merely improbable with insufficient creativity. The comms clicked off as the shuttle bay began its depressurization sequence. Kai took the pilot's seat, his background in atmospheric flight making him the logical choice despite his junior status within the team. Grax assumed the co-pilot position, while the others secured themselves in the rear compartment.
Asteroid shadow in 90 seconds, Kai announced, activating the shuttle's systems.
Launch window opens in 2 minutes, closes in 11. The craft hummed to life around them, its engines warming but not yet igniting to maintain stealth until the last possible moment. Through the viewport, Kai could see the massive asteroid drawing closer, a jagged, pockmarked giant that dwarfed their transport ship.
Remember, Grax rumbled. Once we launch, we maintain complete emission silence until atmospheric entry. Any signal, any energy signature beyond the minimal requirements for flight could trigger the detection grid. The countdown reached 0, and the bay doors slid open to reveal the void. With practiced precision, Kai engaged the shuttle's thrusters at minimal power, just enough to drift free of the transport without triggering detectable emissions. Once clear, they were on their own, a small dark shape silently descending toward an unknown moon in the shadow of a cosmic giant. The asteroid provided perfect cover, its irregular mass blocking any direct observation from the moon below. Kai guided the shuttle through the debris field surrounding it, using subtle course corrections to avoid collisions while maintaining their stealth profile. As they emerged from the asteroid's shadow, the moon came into full view. A gray-green sphere with wispy cloud formations and what appeared to be extensive ocean coverage interspersed with jagged continental landmasses. Atmospheric entry in 3 minutes, Kai reported. All systems nominal. Beside him, Max remained calm but alert, his eyes fixed on the approaching world as if he somehow understood the significance of their mission. The neural interface on his harness showed elevated but stable vital signs, exactly what would be expected from a well-trained service animal in an unusual but not threatening situation. Detection grid ahead, Grax warned, monitoring the passive sensors. Maintain current vector. The shuttle continued its controlled fall toward the moon, using gravity rather than propulsion whenever possible to minimize their signature. As they hit the outer atmosphere, the craft began to vibrate slightly, the inevitable consequence of friction that no stealth technology could completely eliminate. Grid penetration in 5 seconds, Grax counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1. They held their breath collectively, knowing that detection at this point would mean instant mission failure at best, destruction at worst. For several tense seconds, the only sound was the increasing rumble of atmospheric interaction with their hull. We're through, Grax finally announced. No alert signals detected. Grid penetration successful. A collective release of tension rippled through the shuttle. The first and perhaps most technically challenging hurdle had been overcome. Proceeding to landing zone Alpha, Kai confirmed, now activating more of the shuttle's systems as stealth became less critical than controlled descent. ETA 9 minutes. As they descended through cloud layers, the landscape below came into sharper focus, a terrain that seemed oddly Earth-like despite its alien nature. Vast forests stretched across rolling hills, interspersed with rocky outcroppings and what appeared to be ancient impact craters now filled with vegetation. Life sign readings are off the charts, Zinvra reported from her station. This moon appears to be in a state of ecological hyperdevelopment. Consistent with Malcury interference, Cypher offered, its vocal patterns precisely modulated. Their philosophy prioritizes accelerated evolution. They often prepare environments for their experiments. The shuttle broke through the final cloud layer, the landing zone now visible ahead. A small clearing in the forest approximately 3 kilometers from the Malcury facility's estimated location. Kai guided the craft into a perfect descent, using the surrounding vegetation for additional visual cover. Touchdown was gentle, barely a thump as the landing gear made contact with the alien soil. Immediately, the team activated full stealth protocols, powering down all non-essential systems and enabling the shuttle's adaptive camouflage, which would render it nearly invisible against the surrounding landscape within hours. Perimeter secure, Grax announced after a quick sensor sweep. No immediate threats detected. Kai unstrapped himself and moved to release Max from his harness. The dog stretched, shaking himself briefly before assuming an alert posture, nose already sampling the alien air filtering through the cabin's atmospheric systems. Let's gear up, Kai said. We move out in 5 minutes. The team conducted final equipment checks as the shuttle's rear hatch opened with a soft hydraulic hiss, admitting the moon's atmosphere. Environmental analysis confirmed it was breathable for most of the team. Oxygen, nitrogen with trace elements not dissimilar to Earth standard, though Cypher, of course, needed no air at all. As they prepared to disembark, Zinvra approached Kai and Max. First planetary deployment together, she observed. How does Specialist Max seem to be handling it? Kai glanced at the dog,
who was systematically exploring the shuttle's exit ramp, cataloging the new environment with all his senses.
Like a professional, he replied with a hint of pride.
He's curious but focused. Fascinating, she murmured.
The neural interface shows his stress levels are lower than any of ours, despite the unfamiliar situation. Dogs live in the moment, Kai explained.
They don't project fears about the future or dwell on past failures. It's one of their greatest strengths. A philosophical lesson wrapped in fur, Zinvra mused.
Perhaps we could all benefit from such perspective.
Grax interrupted any further reflection.
Move out. Standard recon formation. Bennett and Max on point. Let's see what those Terran senses can tell us about this place.
They exited the shuttle in practice sequence, weapons ready but not aimed, senses alert to any hint of threat or opportunity.
As Kai's boots touched alien soil for the first time, he felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with every new planetary landing. The explorer's thrill that had drawn him to space service in the first place. Beside him, Max seemed to share the sentiment, his posture displaying the perfect balance between caution and curiosity as he systematically processed the new world around them. The forest surrounding their landing zone was unlike anything Kai had seen before. Trees with smooth, pale trunks that twisted in complex helical patterns, supporting canopies of iridescent leaves that shifted colors as they moved in the gentle breeze. The undergrowth consisted of fern-like plants with leaves that seemed to pulse with bioluminescence even in daylight, casting subtle patterns across the forest floor. Artificially engineered ecosystem, Cypher observed, its sensors analyzing the surroundings. Growth patterns suggest accelerated development consistent with Malcori terraforming protocols. How accelerated? Kai asked, watching Max carefully examine a cluster of mushroom-like organisms that retracted into the soil as the dog approached. Based on mineral stratification and dendrological analysis, this forest is approximately 30 standard years old, Cypher replied. Natural evolution would require millennia to achieve this level of biodiversity and adaptation. Grax consulted a holographic map projected from his wrist unit. Facility is northwest, 2.8 kilometers. Terrain shows increased elevation and density. Max can find us the most efficient path, Kai suggested.
His spatial awareness in forests is exceptional. Grax nodded.
Proceed. Kai gave Max the command to scout ahead, using hand signals rather than verbal cues to maintain auditory stealth. The dog moved forward with purpose, his training immediately evident as he navigated the alien terrain with smooth efficiency, periodically pausing to allow the team to catch up. They made good progress, moving through the strange forest with minimal disturbance. Occasionally, Max would indicate areas to avoid, patches of vegetation that moved too deliberately to be explained by wind, or ground that subtly shifted as if something lurked beneath. Each time the team adjusted their course accordingly.
Remarkable,
Zinvra murmured after Max guided them around a particularly beautiful flowering plant, whose petals tracked their movement like eyes. He's identifying predatory species instinctively without prior exposure. Evolutionary recognition, Kai explained. Earth predators often share certain movement patterns and visual cues across species. Max is applying that template here. Efficient, commented Cypher, its display showing patterns of approval. Biological pattern-matching algorithms would require significantly more processing power to achieve comparable results. As they approached the halfway point to the facility, Max suddenly froze, dropping into a low crouch. The neural interface on his harness showed a spike in alertness. The team immediately took cover, weapons ready. Kai moved carefully to Max's position, following the dog's intent gaze. Ahead, barely visible through the iridescent foliage, something large was moving. Not the random patterns of wind-disturbed vegetation, but the deliberate progress of a substantial creature. Kai signaled the others, indicating they should hold position. Then, using silent hand commands, he directed Max to perform a limited reconnaissance. Approach, identify, but do not engage. Max crept forward with impressive stealth, his paws finding silent purchase on the forest floor. Kai watched through a small optical enhancer as the dog reached a better vantage point. What emerged into a small clearing ahead was unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary record. It resembled a cross between a large feline and an insectoid, with a segmented body supported by 6 muscular limbs. Its head featured compound eyes above a set of mandibles that could easily crush bone. Most disturbing, however, was the unmistakable pattern of cybernetic enhancements visible along its spine and skull. Metallic implants that pulsed with subtle energy. Malcori guardian beast, Grax whispered over their secure comm channel. Engineered from multiple species with combat-specific modifications. It's patrolling, Zinvra observed. Note the systematic search pattern. That's not natural predatory behavior.
Kai watched as the creature methodically investigated the area, occasionally lifting its head to sample the air with antennae that extended from its skull. Its movements were too precise, too calculated for a natural organism. Max remained perfectly still, hidden in the underbrush as the creature passed within meters of his position. The dog's training held firm despite the alien threat. No movement, no sound. When the guardian beast finally moved on, continuing its patrol route away from their trajectory, Kai signaled Max to return. The dog ghosted back to the team's position, his demeanor alerting Kai that something had changed. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, noting the continued elevation in Max's vitals through the neural interface. In response, Max turned his head back toward the direction of the creature, then looked meaningfully at Kai. The dog repeated this gesture 3 times, a trained signal indicating multiple similar threats. "There's more of them," Kai translated for the team. "He's detecting others, probably forming a perimeter defense network around the facility." "Can we bypass them?" Grax asked pragmatically. Kai consulted the neural interface, interpreting Max's physiological responses. "He's picking up scent markers throughout the area ahead. They've established a thorough coverage, but..." He paused, watching Max's behavior closely. "There's a pattern to it. Gaps in the patrol routes." "Your beast can identify these gaps?" Grax seemed skeptical but interested. "That's what he's trained for," Kai confirmed. "Search and rescue operations often involve navigating through complex environments without detection. Max can find the blind spots." After brief consultation, they adjusted their approach. Instead of proceeding directly toward the facility, they would follow a more circuitous route based on Max's sensory input, exploiting the guardian beast's patrol patterns. What followed was a masterclass in stealth navigation. Max led them through the increasingly dense forest, sometimes doubling back or waiting for precise timing windows before proceeding. Twice, they froze in perfect stillness as guardian beasts passed nearby, the creatures somehow failing to detect their presence despite advanced sensory capabilities. "Remarkable," Zinvra whispered after one particularly close encounter. "Their olfactory systems should have detected us." "They're searching for known threats," Cypher theorized, its voice modulated to minimal audibility. The Malkori would program their guardians to recognize Coalition species and technology signatures. "But they would have no template for a Terran canine scent profile." "Max is our secret weapon," Kai agreed. "They literally don't know what they're smelling." After nearly an hour of careful progress, they reached the edge of the forest. Beyond lay a cleared perimeter surrounding the Malkori facility, a gleaming structure of curved, organic-looking architecture that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being built upon it. Energy fields shimmered around its boundaries, and various modified creatures patrolled with mechanical precision. "Direct approach impossible," Grax stated flatly, assessing the open ground between the forest edge and the facility. "Too much exposure." "There." Zinvra pointed to what appeared to be a drainage channel extending from the facility into the forest. "Waste management system, potential entry point." Cypher's sensors focused on the channel. "Effluent analysis suggests primarily organic waste. Minimal toxicity for carbon-based life forms." "Sewers," Kai translated wryly. "Always the sewers." Max showed no hesitation when directed toward the drainage channel. The dog's pragmatic nature didn't include distaste for less pleasant infiltration routes, another advantage of his canine perspective. They moved along the forest edge until they reached the drainage point, a concrete-like structure half hidden by engineered vegetation. Cypher quickly bypassed a simple alarm system, and they slipped inside, finding themselves in a tunnel large enough to stand in, though the curved walls required them to proceed in single file. "Facility schematics indicate this should lead to the lower levels." Grax referenced the limited intelligence they had gathered from long-range scans, specifically the research section where experimental subjects would likely be housed. "Any sign of the Galileo crew?" Kai asked. "Unknown," Grax replied. "But if they've been captured for experimentation, the research levels are the most probable location." They moved deeper into the facility, the drainage tunnel gradually transitioning to more finished corridors. Surprisingly, security remained minimal, a fact that Cypher found troubling. "Malkori facilities typically have extensive internal security," the construct noted. "This absence suggests either a trap or extreme confidence in their external defenses." "Or they never expected anyone to get this far," Zinvra suggested. "Either way, we proceed with maximum caution," Grax ordered. "Bennett, how's your beast handling the internal environment?" Kai checked the neural interface. Max's vitals remained stable, his behavior alert but controlled. "He's good. Actually..." Kai paused, noticing a change in the dog's demeanor. "He's picking up something. A scent that's getting his attention." Max had indeed become more focused, his nose working rapidly as he sampled the air in the corridor. Without prompting, he began moving forward with greater purpose, clearly tracking something specific. Let him lead, Grax decided, but maintain security protocols. They followed Max through a series of corridors, descending deeper into the facility. The architecture became increasingly organic in appearance, with walls that seemed to pulse with subtle bioluminescence, and floors that slightly yielded beneath their feet like living tissue. Max led them to a sealed door that appeared more substantial than others they had passed. The neural interface showed his excitement peaking. Whatever he was tracking, it was beyond this barrier. Cypher moved forward, its mechanical fingers interfacing with the door's security system. Advanced encryption. This will require approximately 47 seconds to bypass. As the construct worked, Max's behavior became more insistent, a low whine building in his throat. Kai placed a calming hand on the dog's back, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "Almost there." The door finally slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss, revealing a laboratory beyond. The team moved in quickly, securing the perimeter before taking in the contents of the room. What they found froze them in place. The laboratory contained a series of transparent containment units arranged in a circular pattern. Each unit housed what appeared to be a modified Earth animal. Wolves, foxes, various bird species, and at least 3 dogs of different breeds. But these weren't normal animals. Their bodies showed evidence of extensive modifications, enhanced musculature, unusual appendages, and in some cases, cybernetic components integrated with organic tissue. "Malcury evolutionary acceleration experiments," Zinvra whispered, her wings twitching with distress. "They're attempting to force-evolve Earth species." Max moved directly to one containment unit that housed a German shepherd not unlike himself, though this dog's body had been altered with what appeared to be enhanced limb structures and neural implants visible beneath partially removed fur. The captive dog, sensing Max's presence, raised its head weakly. Their eyes met in a moment of profound recognition, one natural canine acknowledging another across the barrier of Malcury's twisted science. "What have they done?" Kai murmured, horror and anger mixing in his voice. "The same thing they do to all species they deem worthy of elevation," Grax replied grimly. "Forced adaptation, accelerated mutation, cybernetic enhancement." Cypher moved to a central console, its mechanical fingers rapidly interfacing with the Malcury systems. "I am accessing research logs. These experiments have been ongoing for approximately 7 months. Initial subjects were acquired from various Earth outposts, with subsequent generations bred in captivity for specific trait enhancement." "And the Galileo crew?" Zinvra asked the question they all dreaded. Cypher's display flickered briefly, the equivalent of hesitation in its artificial consciousness. "Located. Sublevel 3. Designated as symbiosis research subjects." "Meaning?" Kai pressed, though he suspected the answer. "They are being used to test enhanced bonding protocols with the modified animals," Cypher explained. "The Malcury are attempting to replicate and amplify the human-canine bond through neural integration." The implication was clear and horrifying. They were using the captured humans as test subjects for creating biotechnologically enhanced partnerships with the modified animals. "We need to move quickly," Grax decided. "Zinvra, prepare for extraction of these specimens. Cypher, download all research data. Bennett and Max will accompany me to locate the Galileo survivors." As the team split up to execute their assigned tasks, Kai knelt briefly beside Max, who remained fixated on his captive counterpart. "We'll free them," he promised, both to Max and to the suffering creature beyond the barrier. "All of them." Max turned to meet his gaze, and Kai saw in those intelligent eyes a determination that matched his own. Whatever the Malcury had done here, whatever perversion of the natural bond between humans and animals they had attempted to engineer, they would face the consequences of their actions. And they would learn, perhaps too late, that the true strength of humanity wasn't found in forced evolution or technological enhancement, but in the genuine partnership that had evolved naturally over thousands of years between species who chose to work together rather than be forced together. Sublevel 3 proved more heavily secured than the research laboratory, requiring all of Cypher's advanced decryption capabilities to bypass the multiple security systems. Unlike the upper levels, these corridors were patrolled by more of the guardian beasts they had encountered in the forest, necessitating careful timing and Max's sensory advantages to avoid detection. "Life signs ahead," Grax whispered, consulting a small scanner calibrated to human biological signatures. "Multiple subjects. Status unclear." They approached a heavily secured doorway at the end of the corridor. Unlike the research laboratory, This entrance featured not only electronic security, but also two guardian beasts standing sentinel. These creatures appeared even more heavily modified than those they'd encountered previously, with obvious weapon systems integrated into their limbs and enhanced sensory arrays protruding from their skulls. Direct confrontation inadvisable, Grax assessed. We need a distraction. Kai studied the situation, noting the Guardians' systematic scanning patterns. Their programming seems focused on specific threat profiles. Max doesn't register to them as a priority target. You're suggesting using your beast as bait? Grax seemed skeptical. Not bait, Kai corrected. A ghost. Max can move through their perceptual blind spots, create a distraction beyond that junction, and draw them away temporarily. After brief consideration, Grax approved the plan. Kai prepared Max with silent commands, using hand signals to communicate the complex sequence of actions required. The dog's attention never wavered, his understanding of the mission parameters evident in his focused gaze. When all was ready, Max moved out, slipping into the corridor with silent efficiency. The guardian beasts detected something, their sensor arrays swiveling in Max's direction. But their programming apparently categorized the dog as a low-priority anomaly rather than an immediate threat. Max proceeded to a junction 30 meters beyond the secured door, then deliberately knocked over a small equipment rack with a precise nudge of his body. The resulting clatter echoed through the corridor, triggering the Guardians' alert protocols. As anticipated, they moved to investigate, leaving the doorway temporarily unguarded. Now! Grax ordered, and they rushed forward as Cypher interfaced with the door's security system. In seconds they were through, the door sliding shut behind them just as a facility-wide alarm began to sound. Whether triggered by their entry or Max's distraction was unclear, but their window of stealth had closed. Max! Kai whispered urgently into his comm unit. A soft bark replied through the channel, followed by the sound of running paws. Moments later, Max appeared at a secondary entrance to the room, a ventilation shaft whose cover he had somehow managed to dislodge. Good boy, Kai breathed in relief as the dog rejoined them, seemingly unharmed by his solo mission. Their reunion was short-lived as they took in their surroundings. The chamber was larger than expected, divided into a series of interconnected cells. Each contained what appeared to be a human subject connected to various Malkori biotechnology. Some lay unconscious on examination tables, while others sat in apparent meditation, neural interfaces attached to their skulls. Galileo crew, Grax confirmed after checking identification markers. 12 subjects. Variable modification status. Kai moved to the nearest cell, recognizing the insignia of a Coalition science officer on the subject's partially removed uniform. The woman was conscious but non-responsive, her eyes open but unfocused, as neural filaments pulsed with energy where they connected to her cerebral cortex. Can we safely disconnect them? Kai asked, fighting to control his horror and anger. Cypher joined them, its sensors scanning the neural interfaces. Abrupt disconnection would cause significant neural trauma. However, I have accessed the facility's systems and can initiate a controlled shutdown sequence. Do it, Grax ordered. How long? 4 minutes, 17 seconds for safe disconnection protocols, Cypher replied, already interfacing with the central control system. However, facility security forces have been alerted to our presence. Estimated response time, 3 minutes, 20 seconds. We'll hold them off, Grax said grimly, moving toward the main entrance with his weapon ready. Bennett, secure the secondary access points with your beast. Kai positioned himself and Max near the ventilation shaft entrance and another smaller doorway, establishing a defensive perimeter while Cypher worked to free the captive humans. The first subjects are ready for extraction, Cypher announced after approximately 2 minutes. 2 of the Galileo crew members were now disconnected from the Malkori systems, their vital signs stable but weak. Get them on their feet if possible, Grax ordered. We move as soon as the last one is cleared. Before Cypher could complete the disconnection sequence, the main door exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris surged 3 guardian beasts, flanked by what appeared to be Malkori adherents, humanoid figures whose bodies showed significant self-modification, with mechanical and biological enhancements visible beneath their translucent environmental suits. Intruders identified, announced one of the Malkori in a voice that seemed to emanate from multiple sources within its modified body. Coalition forces, terminate and preserve neural tissue for analysis. Grax opened fire immediately, his heavy weapons sending one of the guardian beasts crashing back through the doorway. Kai targeted the Malkori adherents, knowing from briefings that their hybrid biology made them vulnerable to precise hits at the junction points between organic and mechanical components. Max, without prompting, positioned himself protectively in front of the freed but weakened Galileo crew members, his training automatically prioritizing civilian protection. The battle was chaotic and brutal. The Malkori fought with the fanaticism of true believers, seemingly unconcerned with personal injury as they pressed forward. Their guardian beasts demonstrated terrifying coordination, flanking and maneuvering with tactical precision that bespoke a hive mind functionality. Despite the overwhelming force, the team held their ground. Grax's natural stone-like armor deflected attacks that would have incapacitated most beings, while Kai's combat training allowed him to exploit the vulnerabilities in the Malkori's hybridized forms. Most surprising to their attackers, however, was Max. The dog moved with incredible speed and precision, darting between the guardian beasts' attacks to target weak points in their cybernetic structures. His natural instincts, honed by training but unburdened by conscious overthinking, made his movements unpredictable to the algorithmically driven guardians. "Neural disconnection complete," Cypher announced as the last Galileo crew member was freed from the Malkori systems. "Extraction path?" Grax checked his tactical display, which showed the facility now in full alert status with security forces converging on their position. "Main routes compromised. Alternatives?" "Maintenance shaft network," Cypher suggested, accessing facility schematics. "Connect to sub-level 1, then lateral movement to the research section where Zinvra is preparing the animal subjects for extraction." "Lead the way," Grax ordered. They moved quickly, Kai and Grax supporting the weakened Galileo survivors while Max and Cypher secured their path. The maintenance shafts were narrow and utilitarian, clearly not designed with security in mind, a fortunate oversight in the Malkori's otherwise comprehensive defenses. They encountered minimal resistance during their ascent, suggesting the Malkori had committed their forces to the more obvious escape routes. When they finally reached the research level and rejoined Zinvra, Kai was relieved to find she had successfully prepared the captive Earth animals for transport. "Mobile containment fields established," she reported. "Minimal sedation applied. They can be moved safely." "Extraction vessel?" Grax inquired. "En route to secondary landing zone," Zinvra confirmed. "ETA 12 minutes. We need to move now," Kai urged. "Once the Malkori realize we've circumvented their main security cordon, they'll lock down all exits." The combined group, the infiltration team, the rescued Galileo crew, and the containment fields housing the liberated animal subjects, moved through the facility toward an emergency exit Cypher had identified in the schematics. Max took point alongside Kai, the dog's heightened senses proving invaluable in detecting and avoiding Malkori patrols. They had almost reached the exit when disaster struck. A previously unidentified security system activated, sealing bulkheads throughout the corridor ahead. Simultaneously, a new type of guardian beast emerged from concealed chambers, larger than previous iterations, and equipped with what appeared to be integrated energy weapons. "Trap," Grax stated unnecessarily, already positioning himself to provide cover. "Alternative?" Kai asked Cypher, who was rapidly processing the facility schematics. The construct's display flickered with complex calculations. No viable alternatives within acceptable parameters. This was the final exit point not locked down by primary security protocols. They were trapped, caught between advancing guardian beasts and sealed bulkheads, with vulnerable civilians and research subjects to protect. It was Max who changed the equation. The dog had been intensely studying the bulkhead mechanism, his head tilted in that characteristic canine expression of problem-solving. Suddenly, he darted toward a small access panel near the floor, a maintenance connection point that the others had overlooked. "Max?" Kai called, unsure of the dog's intent. Max barked once, then began pawing at the panel with deliberate motions. Cypher immediately understood. "Manual override possibility," the construct announced, moving to the access point Max had identified. "This is a physical bypass for emergency services, not connected to the central security grid." While Grax and Kai held off the advancing guardians, Cypher worked to activate the manual override. The sounds of combat filled the corridor, energy weapons discharging, the synthetic howls of damaged guardian beasts, the steady rhythm of Grax's heavy pulse cannon. "Override successful," Cypher finally announced as the bulkhead began to slowly retract. "Move! Now!" Grax ordered, maintaining suppressing fire as the civilians and research subjects were hurried through the opening. Kai and Max were the last to retreat, providing close-quarters defense as Grax finally fell back through the bulkhead. Once they were all through, Cypher reversed the override, sealing the bulkhead behind them just as the Guardians were about to breach the threshold. They emerged onto a loading platform that overlooked the forested landscape beyond the facility perimeter. In the distance, they could see their extraction vessel approaching, a larger shuttle than the one they had arrived in, designed specifically for the rescue operation. Perimeter defenses still active, Zinvra warned, noting the energy barrier that separated them from potential extraction. I can disable them temporarily, Cypher offered, connecting to a nearby control interface. But it will trigger final containment protocols. We will have exactly 42 seconds to clear the barrier before it re-establishes with doubled intensity. Do it, Grax commanded. Everyone prepare to move on my signal. As Cypher worked, Max suddenly became agitated, his attention fixed on something in the sky above the approaching shuttle. Kai followed the dog's gaze and felt his blood freeze. Aerial interceptors, he warned. At least 3, on approach vector to our extraction vessel. Grax assessed the situation with the rapid calculation of a veteran commander. They'll shoot down our ride before it can land. The situation seemed impossible, trapped on the platform with no way to reach their approaching shuttle and no way to warn it of the impending attack. Kai searched desperately for options, finding none that didn't end in capture or death. It was Zinvra who provided the solution. My wings, she said simply. I can intercept the interceptors. Suicide mission. Grax objected immediately. Your combat capabilities against aerial platforms are minimal. Not combat, she corrected. Distraction. My species can generate electromagnetic pulses through our wing membranes. Short range but effective against guidance systems. Before anyone could object further, she had removed her tactical gear, allowing her wings to expand to their full impressive span. Get these people to safety, she told Kai. I'll buy you the time. With a powerful downstroke, she launched herself from the platform, her wings catching the air currents and carrying her rapidly toward the approaching interceptors. It was a magnificent and terrible sight, a single winged figure flying directly into the path of machines designed for killing. Barrier down, Cypher announced. 42 seconds mark. Move, Grax ordered, and they rushed forward, supporting the weakened Galileo crew and maneuvering the containment fields housing the animal subjects. Above them, Zinvra engaged the interceptors. Her wings began to pulse with building energy, visible as rippling patterns of light across their translucent surfaces. The lead interceptor attempted evasive maneuvers too late. She released the accumulated electromagnetic pulse directly into its guidance systems as she swept past. The craft immediately went into an uncontrolled spin, colliding with a second interceptor in a spectacular mid-air explosion. The third interceptor adjusted its attack vector, now targeting Zinvra directly. Energy weapons fired, narrowly missing as she executed aerial maneuvers that seemed impossible for a being of her size. On the ground, the extraction team had almost reached the perimeter boundary. The shuttle was descending rapidly, its landing ramp already extending in anticipation of their boarding. 20 seconds until barrier reactivation, Cypher warned. They pushed harder, the finish line in sight. Max stayed close to the modified German Shepherd's containment field, as if offering reassurance to his altered counterpart. Above, Zinvra had maneuvered behind the remaining interceptor, building another electromagnetic pulse. She released it just as the craft executed a tight turn, catching it at its most vulnerable moment. The interceptor's systems failed catastrophically, sending it plummeting toward the facility itself. 10 seconds! The extraction vessel touched down just beyond the perimeter, its engines still running for immediate departure. They rushed up the ramp, Grax personally carrying 2 of the weakened Galileo crew members. 5 seconds! Kai turned back, searching the sky for Zinvra. He spotted her descending rapidly, her wings clearly damaged from the engagement. She wouldn't make it to the shuttle before the barrier reactivated. Max! He called, a desperate plan forming instantly. The dog was beside him in a heartbeat, understanding in his eyes even before Kai finished his command. Together, they sprinted back toward the barrier, even as Cypher shouted a warning. 3 seconds until reactivation! Zinvra was still 10 meters above them, her descent slowed by damaged wing membranes. Max barked once, alerting her to their position. 2! Kai cupped his hands to create a launch platform. Max backed up 3 paces, then sprinted forward with perfect timing, leaping into Kai's hands. With every ounce of his strength, Kai propelled the dog upward. 1! Max soared through the air, intercepting Zinvra just as her strength gave out. His jaws gently but firmly caught her arm, arresting her fall just enough to change her trajectory. They tumbled together toward the ground, directly on the extraction side of the perimeter. The barrier reactivated with a crackling surge of energy, casting blue-white illumination across the scene as Kai dived through its boundary with centimeters to spare. He rolled to his feet just in time to see Max and Zinvra land in an ungraceful, but ultimately successful heap. Go, go, go! Grax bellowed from the shuttle ramp. Kai scooped up the injured Zinvra while Max bounded ahead to the waiting vessel. They had barely cleared the ramp when the engines roared to maximum thrust, lifting the shuttle into the air as Malkori reinforcements emerged from the facility. All accounted for? Grax demanded as the shuttle banked sharply, accelerating away from the compound. All present, Cypher confirmed, securing the last containment field housing the rescued animals. Barrier penetration successful. No pursuit craft detected. Kai gently laid Zinvra on a medical berth, where a treatment unit immediately began assessing her injuries. Her wings were badly damaged, with tears in the delicate membranes and evidence of energy weapons scoring across their surface. "You're either the bravest or the most foolish being I've ever served with," Grax told her gruffly, his tone belying the genuine concern beneath. She managed a weak flutter of her damaged wings. "Tactical necessity," she replied, though a smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Besides, I knew our Terran specialists wouldn't let me fall." Max approached the medical berth, whining softly as he observed Zinvra's injured state. He gently rested his head on the edge of the berth, his eyes fixed on her with unmistakable concern. "See?" she murmured, reaching out to stroke his fur. "The bond extends beyond species. He understands." Kai felt a profound sense of pride as he watched his companion's display of empathy. "That's what makes him special," he agreed. "What makes all dogs special? They care about the pack, whatever form it takes." The shuttle continued its ascent, breaking through the atmosphere into the relative safety of space. Ahead, they could see the Coalition transport vessel moving into position for retrieval. As the immediate danger passed, Kai took a moment to check on the rescued animals. The modified German Shepherd was awake but disoriented, its enhanced eyes tracking movement with an intelligence that seemed almost human. When it saw Max, however, something changed in its demeanor. A recognition that transcended the Malcori's modifications. "They'll need extensive rehabilitation," Cypher noted, observing Kai's interest. "But preliminary analysis suggests the modifications are reversible in most cases. The Malcori were still in experimental phases." "And the Galileo crew?" Kai asked, glancing toward the human survivors who were receiving medical attention. "Similar prognosis," Grax replied. "The Malcori hadn't completed the neural integration. With proper Coalition medical intervention, they should recover most if not all of their original cognitive functions." What were they trying to accomplish? Kai wondered aloud. What was the point of all this? Cypher's display shifted to a contemplative pattern. Based on the data I extracted, the Malcori were attempting to artificially recreate and enhance the human-canine bond that evolved naturally on Earth. They believe such bonds represent an untapped evolutionary pathway, symbiotic relationships that amplify the capabilities of both species without merging them completely. They were trying to weaponize friendship, Zinvra murmured from her medical berth. An apt if simplistic assessment, Cypher acknowledged. They failed to understand that the strength of the bond lies in its voluntary nature. Force evolving it destroyed the very thing that makes it effective. Kai looked down at Max, who had returned to his side after checking on Zinvra. You can't engineer trust, he said simply. It's earned, not programmed. As if understanding his words perfectly, Max pressed against Kai's leg in silent affirmation of their partnership. 3 weeks later, Kai stood in the observation bay of Coalition Medical Station Orion 7, watching as rehabilitation specialists worked with the rescued animals. Most had undergone initial procedures to remove the more invasive Malcori modifications, though complete restoration would take months of careful treatment. The German Shepherd, now named Nova by the medical staff, was making the most rapid progress. Much of her enhanced musculature remained, but the neural implants had been successfully removed without permanent damage to her cognitive functions. She was currently engaged in basic obedience training, relearning how to interact with humans in a healthy, natural way. She shows remarkable resilience, observed Dr. Elara Voss, the xenobiologist overseeing the rehabilitation program. All of them do, really, but especially her. Dogs are adaptable by nature, Kai replied. It's one of their greatest strengths. So I'm learning, Dr. Voss said with a smile. Before the Galileo incident, I specialized in xenobiology, not Earth species. Now I find myself fascinated by the evolutionary path that produced such social flexibility in canines. Max sat attentively at Kai's side, watching the proceedings with interest. He had been allowed to interact with the rehabilitating animals under carefully controlled conditions, his natural canine communication providing comfort that human interventions couldn't match. How's the neural reversal progressing with the Galileo crew? Kai asked, shifting the subject to the human survivors. Excellently, Dr. Voss reported. Captain Mercer was released yesterday, and 3 more crew members are scheduled for discharge this week. The Malcori neural interfaces were invasive, but not as permanently integrated as we initially feared. Good news, Kai nodded, genuinely relieved. He'd visited the recovering crew members several times during their treatment,
feeling a personal connection to their ordeal. Any lasting effects? Some neural pathway alterations that will require ongoing therapy, Dr. Voss admitted. And psychological trauma, of course. Being forcibly connected to another consciousness, even in animals, leaves scars that aren't just physical. Kai watched as Nova successfully completed a complex command sequence, earning praise from her trainer. What will happen to them? He asked, indicating the rehabilitating animals. After they've recovered? Dr. Voss's expression softened. The Coalition Council has been debating that very question. There are ethical considerations given their forced modifications. They can't simply be returned to Earth. They're too altered, and they've experienced trauma that would make normal domestic life challenging. Before she could continue, the observation bay door slid open to admit Commander Zekthar. Kai immediately straightened to attention, saluting crisply. Max, recognizing the commander, sat at perfect attention beside him. At ease, Lieutenant, Zekthar clicked, his compound eyes scanning the rehabilitation area beyond the observation window. And you as well, Specialist Max. The commander turned to Dr. Voss. Doctor, I'd like a moment with Lieutenant Bennett. Of course, Commander. She nodded, excusing herself with a respectful nod. Once they were alone, Zekthar watched the rehabilitation session in silence for several moments before speaking. The Malkori facility has been completely dismantled, he finally said. Coalition Special Forces secured it after your extraction. The adherents have been detained and their research confiscated. Good, Kai replied simply, still watching Nova's training. Your mission is being described as an unqualified success at the highest levels of Coalition Command. Zekthar continued. The rescue of the Galileo crew, the liberation of the experimental subjects, the intelligence gathered on Malkori operations, all accomplished with minimal casualties. Minimal, but not zero, Kai noted, thinking of Zinvra's still recovering wings. The damage had been severe enough to require specialized regeneration treatment, and it would be months before she could fly again. Lieutenant Zinvra made her choice, Zekthar said, his tone softer than Kai had ever heard it. A choice that saved the mission and everyone involved. The 7th understands the meaning of necessary sacrifice. The commander moved closer to the observation window, his insectoid face reflecting in the transparent surface. I've reviewed the mission recordings from your neural interfaces. Particularly interesting was the moment when Specialist Max identified the manual override that Cypher eventually used to bypass the security bulkhead. Kai nodded, remembering the critical moment when Max had essentially saved them all by finding the one weakness in the Malkori's otherwise perfect trap. That wasn't training, Zekthar observed. No service animal program teaches specific identification of alien facility bypass mechanisms. No, Kai agreed. That was pure problem solving. Dogs are more intelligent than most species give them credit for, especially when they have a clear objective. In this case, protecting his team. Zekthar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The neural interface readings showed something remarkable during that moment. A spike in cognitive activity that our xenobiologists are still analyzing. It suggests a level of abstract thinking previously undocumented in Terran canines. Max, perhaps sensing he was the subject of discussion, looked up at the commander with alert interest. The bond between you enhanced his natural capabilities, Zekthar continued. Not through Malkori-style forced evolution, but through partnership. Trust. The very elements the Malkori tried and failed to artificially replicate. The commander turned from the window to face Kai directly. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. The Coalition Council has reached a decision regarding the rehabilitated animals, particularly the enhanced canines. Kai waited, suspecting what might be coming but not daring to hope. They are to be offered the opportunity to serve, Zekthar stated. A new program, inspired by your partnership with Max. Enhanced canine specialists, attached to various Coalition operations where their unique capabilities would be valuable. Service dogs, Kai translated, a smile spreading across his face. Military working dogs, but on a galactic scale. Indeed, Zekthar confirmed. Though participation would be entirely voluntary, both for the animals and their potential handlers. The Coalition's xenopsychologists were quite insistent on that point. The relationship must develop naturally, not be assigned or forced. And you want me to help implement this program, Kai guessed. More than that, Zekthar corrected. I want you to lead it. A new division within the 7th Squadron, dedicated to interspecies operational partnerships. Your experience with Max makes you uniquely qualified. Kai was momentarily speechless,
the offer exceeding anything he had anticipated. "I'm honored, sir, but I'm still relatively junior in rank." "Rank is being adjusted accordingly," Zekthar clicked dismissively. "Promotion orders are already processed. Captain Bennett has a more appropriate authority level for the assignment." "Captain?" Kai repeated, stunned by the sudden advancement. "Unless you object?" There was a hint of amusement in the commander's voice. "No objection, sir," Kai replied quickly. "I'm just surprised." "The 7th rewards results, not time served," Zakthar stated simply. "Your first mission demonstrated exceptional capability, innovative thinking, and the kind of leadership qualities we value above all else." The commander's compound eyes shifted to Max. "As for you, Specialist, your rank remains unchanged for now. Coalition bureaucracy is still adapting to the concept of non-humanoid service members. But your personnel file now includes an official commendation for valor during the Malkori operation." Max's tail thumped once against the floor, his equivalent of accepting the honor with appropriate dignity. "When do we start?" Kai asked, his mind already racing with possibilities for the new program. "Immediately," Zakthar replied. "The first potential candidates are already here." He gestured toward the rehabilitation area, where Nova and the other recovering animals continued their training. "Once they're medically cleared, you'll begin assessing their suitability for service and identifying potential handlers from volunteers across Coalition forces." As if aware of her potential future, Nova looked up at that moment, her intelligent eyes meeting Kai's through the observation window. Despite all she had endured at the Malkori's hands, there was no fear in that gaze, only curiosity and a resilient spirit that the experiments had failed to break. "She'll be first," Kai decided, recognizing something special in the German shepherd's demeanor. "I think she's going to be extraordinary." 6 months later, Kai stood on the observation deck of the Coalition training facility Centaurus Prime, watching with undisguised pride as the first graduating class of the Enhanced Canine Specialist program ran through their final qualification exercises. 8 handler canine teams moved through a complex obstacle course designed to test both physical capabilities and partnership dynamics. The handlers came from diverse Coalition species, 2 humans besides Kai, a draconian whose scales shimmered with excitement, a luminary whose glow pulsed in rhythm with his canine partner's movements, a Petrosian who had initially seemed an unlikely match for a border collie, but had developed a remarkable bond, and even a Chronal whose slightly out-of-phase existence had proven unexpectedly compatible with a husky's independent nature. The canines themselves represented various breeds rescued from the Malkori facility, or volunteered by Earth diplomatic personnel who recognized the program's potential. Some still bore visible signs of their Malkori modifications, enhanced musculature, slightly altered sensory organs, accelerated healing capabilities, but these had been carefully evaluated and deemed non-harmful to their physical or psychological well-being. "They look ready," observed Zinvra, who stood beside Kai. Her wings had finally healed completely, though faint scarring was visible in certain light, badges of honor she wore proudly. As the program's second-in-command, she had been instrumental in designing training protocols that accommodated both the canines' unique capabilities and the diverse physiological needs of their Coalition handlers. "More than ready," Kai agreed. 4 of them are already assigned to active squadrons. The others will be deployed to specialized roles: search and rescue, medical detection, security operations. Max sat between them, watching the exercises with the experienced eye of a veteran. As the program's unofficial demonstration model, he had participated in countless training sessions, showing the new recruits, both canine and handler, what was possible when the partnership reached its full potential. At the center of the training field, Nova led the pack through the final challenge, a complex search and rescue scenario involving simulated hazardous materials and hidden victims. Her handler, a human xenobiologist named Dr. Eli Reeves, who had volunteered after witnessing the Galileo crew's recovery, moved in perfect synchronization with her. What had begun as a rehabilitation relationship had evolved into a professional partnership that rivaled Kai and Max's in its intuitive coordination. "Nova has exceeded all expectations," Zinvra noted. "The neural modifications the Malkori inflicted on her have actually enhanced her problem-solving capabilities without compromising her essential canine nature." "That's what the Malkori never understood," Kai replied, watching as Nova successfully located the final hidden victim and signaled her handler with a specialized alert posture. "They tried to force evolution along a predetermined path, but the real magic happens when natural abilities are allowed to develop through voluntary partnership." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Zekthar, accompanied by several high-ranking Coalition officials. The insectoid officer had become the program's most vocal advocate in Coalition leadership circles, securing funding and resources that had transformed what began as a specialized initiative within the 7th Squadron into a full-fledged Coalition-wide operational division. "Captain Bennett," Zeke-Thar greeted him formally, though there was an unmistakable note of satisfaction in his clicking speech. "The Council representatives are here to observe the graduation demonstration." Kai saluted sharply, Max immediately sitting at perfect attention beside him. "The teams are just completing their final qualification exercise, Commander. They'll be ready for the formal demonstration in approximately 15 minutes. "Excellent," Zeke-Thar replied. One of his compound eyes focused on Max while the other remained on Kai, a disconcerting ability that Kai had eventually grown accustomed to. "And how is our original specialist adapting to his role as training model?" "He's a natural teacher," Kai said with pride, glancing down at his partner. "The recruits respond to him instinctively. I think they recognize his experience." Max maintained his formal posture, though his tail moved in a subtle wag that only Kai would notice, the canine equivalent of modest acknowledgement. The Council representatives were observing the training field with expressions ranging from curious to openly impressed. One of them, a consortium diplomat whose species Kai didn't immediately recognize, approached with particular interest. "Captain Bennett," the diplomat addressed him. "I was initially skeptical of this program. The concept of non-sentient service members seemed irregular by Coalition standards." His gaze shifted to Max, studying the dog with newfound respect. "I see now that my understanding of sentience may have been too narrowly defined." "A common misconception," Kai replied diplomatically. "Dogs may not communicate through language as we understand it, but their emotional intelligence, problem-solving capabilities, and capacity for forming complex social bonds arguably meet many definitions of sentience, just expressed differently." "Indeed," the diplomat agreed, "and the practical results are undeniable. The enhanced canine specialist teams deployed to the Rigel sector have already demonstrated exceptional effectiveness in search and rescue operations following the ionic storms." On the training field, the qualification exercise had concluded. The handler canine teams formed a precise line, standing at attention with impressive discipline. Nova and Dr. Reeves took the central position, befitting their status as the program's top-performing team. "If you'll excuse me," Kai said, "I need to inspect the graduates before the formal demonstration." With a nod from Zeke-Thar, Kai and Max headed down to the field. As they approached, Kai could see the anticipation in both the handlers and their canine partners, the culmination of 6 months of intensive training, relationship building, and overcoming countless challenges. "Teams, attention!" Kai called out, receiving an immediate response as handlers snapped to formal posture and canines sat with perfect discipline beside them. Max trotted at Kai's side as he moved down the line, inspecting each team briefly. Despite his official capacity as program director, this moment felt personal. Each of these partnerships represented a validation of what he and Max had pioneered, proof that the human-canine bond could not only survive in the complex, multi-species environment of the Coalition, but could actually thrive and evolve in new, beneficial directions. When he reached Nova and Dr. Reeves, Kai paused. The German Shepherd's transformation from traumatized experimental subject to confident elite service animal was nothing short of remarkable. Where the Malcori had tried to force an artificial evolution, Nova had found her own path, healing, growing, and forming a partnership based on mutual trust rather than neural implants or genetic manipulation. "You've come a long way," Kai told her softly, allowing her to break protocol briefly to greet Max with a quick nose touch. A gesture of respect between canines that transcended human military formalities. "She's ready for whatever comes next," Dr. Reeves said, his pride in his partner evident. "We both are." "I know," Kai nodded. "That's why you're being assigned to the 7th Squadron, effective immediately following graduation. Commander Zeke-Thar specifically requested you for deep reconnaissance operations." Reeves's eyes widened slightly. Assignment to the Elite 7th was considered the highest possible placement for program graduates. "Thank you, sir. We won't let you down." "I know you won't," Kai replied with a smile. "Just remember what we've emphasized throughout training. The technology, the modifications, the specialized equipment. None of it matters as much as the bond between you. Trust that, and everything else follows." After completing his inspection, Kai returned to the center of the field to address the assembled teams. Max sat beside him with formal bearing, every inch the model of a Coalition specialist despite his furry, four-legged form. "Graduates of the first Enhanced Canine Specialist Program," Kai began, his voice carrying across the training field to where the Coalition officials watched. Today marks not just the completion of your training, but the beginning of a new chapter in Coalition history. You represent the living embodiment of one of humanity's most successful evolutionary partnerships, now expanded to include diverse species from across the galaxy. He paused, looking at each team in turn. The road ahead won't be easy. You'll face skepticism, unique challenges, and situations for which there is no training manual or historical precedent. But you have something powerful on your side. A partnership based on mutual trust, respect, and a bond that transcends the barriers of species and language. Kai glanced down at Max, whose attention remained focused forward, though his ears swiveled briefly toward his handler, a subtle acknowledgement of their shared journey. 6 months ago, most of you were strangers to each other. The handlers came from diverse backgrounds and species, many having never interacted with Earth canines before. The canines themselves had experienced trauma and exploitation at the hands of the Mallory. Yet look at you now. Integrated teams whose whole is greater than the sum of your parts. He straightened to formal posture for the official conclusion. By the authority vested in me by Coalition Command, I hereby certify all assembled teams as fully qualified enhanced canine specialists, with all the responsibilities and privileges thereof. Congratulations, graduates. A cheer went up from the assembled staff and observers, while the graduated teams maintained their formal bearing for just a moment longer, before breaking into more natural celebrations. Handlers kneeling to embrace their canine partners, tails wagging with uninhibited joy, and in the case of the Luminari handler, a brilliant pulse of multicolored light that expressed his happiness more eloquently than words ever could. As the formal ceremony transitioned to a celebration, Kai found a quiet moment to step away from the crowds. Max followed, the two of them finding a peaceful spot overlooking the training compound. "Well, buddy," Kai said softly, kneeling beside his partner, "I'd say we've started something pretty special." Max leaned against him in silent agreement, his warm presence the most eloquent response possible. Beyond them stretched the Coalition training facility, where dozens more handler canine teams were already in various stages of development. And beyond that, the stars themselves. Countless worlds where these unique partnerships would soon demonstrate their value. What had begun with a skeptical Commander Zekthar dismissing a tiny furless biped and his beast had evolved into a program that was reshaping Coalition operational doctrine. All because one human and one dog had shown what was possible when species came together not through forced modification or technological enhancement, but through the simple, profound power of mutual trust and respect. The Mallory tried to weaponize our bond, Kai mused, scratching behind Max's ears in the spot he particularly enjoyed. They failed because they couldn't understand that its strength comes from choice, from millions of years of two species choosing to work together, to protect each other, to become something greater than either could be alone. Max looked up at him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than his canine brain should technically be capable of comprehending. In that gaze, Kai saw not just his partner, but a bridge between worlds, a living embodiment of humanity's first, and perhaps most successful venture into interspecies cooperation. "Ready for our next mission?" Kai asked, though he already knew the answer. Max's tail wagged once, decisively. Of course he was ready. That was the thing about dogs that the Mallory had never grasped, that Commander Zekthar had initially dismissed, and that the Coalition was only now beginning to fully appreciate. They were always ready, to work, to protect, to face the unknown with courage and adaptability that even the most advanced species in the galaxy might envy. As they walked back to join the graduation celebration, Kai reflected that perhaps humanity's greatest contribution to the Galactic Coalition wasn't their technology, their art, or even their diplomatic skills. Perhaps it was the simple, profound gift of dogs, creatures who had walked beside humans from caves to campfires to starships, their loyal hearts and clever minds unchanged by the passage of millennia or the crossing of vast interstellar distances. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky overhead, Kai Bennett and Specialist Max set their sights on those distant lights, ready for whatever adventures awaited them among the worlds of the Coalition and beyond. Not as master and pet, not as human and beast, but as equal partners bound by a bond as ancient as Earth and as limitless as the universe itself. The end.